A 12-foot, two-headed mummy found off the coast of Argentina.
A lot of arguments whether they were built or found.
They recorded every aspect of their lives. Not a single hieroglyph depicts the creation of pyramids. How in the world did they build an entire temple into a cliffside? Precision cutting technology on the hardest material in the world. They have some advanced drilling technology that we're not aware of. These ancient civilizations in the past could have easily been on a different trajectory.
It feels almost like we're devolving. It's like our technology is getting better and our people are getting dumber.
COVID-19 originated in animals sold in a so-called wet market in China.
All steps for man, scientists for mankind.
Oh man, have we got a great episode for you today. Just kind of insight here for David Whitehead personally. When I'm getting ready to board a flight or I'm taking a trip and you're like, what's kind of something interesting that kind of occupy my mind while I'm doing this or a long road trip? There's stuff that I've always loved looking at and thinking about and digging into of buildings that were built with rocks that are cut from one piece of stone that we can't even lift or move today. And you're like, how did they do that? Who did that? When did they do that? And people don't really know. They speculate, and sometimes there's different theories on things from around the world. And we were learning new things. They're digging up new things using technologies that we have today. And some of it just falls under that category of just things that make you go, just a chin scratcher. You're like, I don't know. And when I find a new one of those that I thought I already knew about or I never heard of before, it's kind of fun. You're like, that is interesting. And then I run it through this filter of how does it fit into my worldview and what I know of the world and what I've read and things. I look at how does it line up with the Bible? How does it line up with what I've learned? How does it line up with my studies? How does it even line up with my gut? Like, that doesn't seem real or right, or maybe that came from here. It's just an interesting time to be alive because we have access to more information. But also, we run into stuff all the time that people have never heard of. So you are going to love us. We have an expert today on all things that make you go, somebody that's dedicated countless hours to researching and doing what I just said, digging into these things and saying, do people know about this? And kind of putting it on the table and have you examine it. So we're going to get into that right away. I want to tell you today's show is brought to you by Kirk Elliott, PhD. I've known Kirk Elliott for over 25 years. He's an investment expert. He has not one PhD. He has two PhDs. He's come here to Kansas City in our live studio. We've done deep dives with him on economic theories. He has a PhD in understanding what causes inflation. How does a government monitor when they say there's inflation, the metrics that they do to measure what's in your shopping cart and to come up with these price index and all these things. That is his field of expertise. And he uses that to help people hedge and protect themselves against a deflating dollar. No matter where you live, this is worth less right now than it was when I first started talking at the beginning of this episode. And it's kind of a shame that that's happening. I feel like it's happening intentionally. And a way to work against that is protecting yourself with gold or silver. We've been doing that for a long time now, allocating a portion of our income every single month towards moving from fake money into real money. And you go to flyovergold.com, flyovergold.com. And it's just a landing page, takes you into Kirk Elliott's world. He has a team of people that are trained to just give you a consultation. Hey, here's your options. Here's the move. Here's how we can make this painless and simple for you if you want to get out of fake money into real money. If you have cash or savings or you got a motorcycle in the garage that, hey, it's just sitting there. Right now is not the time to be taking any extra money and buying a jet ski or something different. I keep telling this is an era where you need to be getting out of the fake money and saving up something tangible, something that's real, because CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, there's a global move to a one currency globally to be able to control what you're doing. And if you can work outside of that system, it's good. And second of all, it helps you beat inflation. The example that I always use, if you go back to 1917 for 1 ounce of gold or a $20 bill, either way, they were worth about the same amount. 1 ounce of gold, you could buy a complete men's suit, a hat, jacket, belt, shoes, tie, everything, or a $20 bill. Both of them would buy you a whole men's suit. Can you imagine that? That's unbelievable. Today, what would a $20 bill buy you at a men's clothing store? Some socks or a handkerchief or maybe nothing. But 1 ounce of gold today, instead of being equal to the $20 bill, it's equal to about $1,800 or a little more probably. That would still buy you a whole men's suit at any men's clothing store, for the most part here in the United States. So what's the difference? What happened? Did the gold become worth more, or did the dollar become worth less? Okay. The way that you can have that work in your advantage is getting out of fake money into something real. Right now, silver is one of the best moves in the world because the gap between it and gold is crazy. And there's so many manufacturing needs for it in computers and everything else that we do. So silver is an incredible move, and it's a lot cheaper. Instead of $1,800 an ounce, you can get an ounce of silver for, that's its spot price around $25 right now. And it's consistently increasing. Kirk's written a book called Thriving in the Economic Tsunami. Doesn't deny that we're right now in kind of a global tsunami. If you don't know who you've all know Harari or Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, BlackRock, Vanguard. These are people that are impacting your life right now, but they're creating a tsunami around us. We're not going to deny that that's in existence, but you don't have to die in it. You can actually thrive in it. And again, my wife and I have known Kirk for over 25 years. His dad was a mentor to Stacy and I in business and in life. He was an elder in our church when we were first married. And again, he has not one PhD, but two, which is twice as many as I have. And he's a very trusted advisor in that space. So reach out, go to flyovergold.com, set up a consultation with him and his team. You'll be glad that you did. Our family, in-laws, everybody has done that. So Conspiracy Conversations, every day of the week, Flyover Conservative Show, we do a nightly show focused on examining culture, current events through the lens of conservative Christian values. And I don't pull any punches that's kind of my worldview, but I'm also willing to hear everybody out that's possible. If somebody has thought through their arguments well, if they've done 10,000 hours of research in private or written a book or created content in a space, I'm like, you know what? I am here to take notes and to listen, and I enjoy the conversations. I do this also as an exercise for our listeners. I want you to go through these shows with us and realize you go to the grocery store. You don't put every item in the whole grocery store in your cart and try to take it home. You take what's useful to you, what you can use, what you need right now. Put that in the cart, take it home with you, and hopefully you kind of go through this process. And I show this every time. But most people kind of think that, hey, I understand Rubik's Cubes, they're red. And that's true. That's true. They're red. But every once in a while, someone will come along and they'll be like, yeah, but David, have you ever done this? And they kind of rotate it and it's like, oh my gosh, they're white. And then I'm like, Rubik's Cubes are red and white. I got to figure it out. And you go tell everybody, and that's what you're saying at the water cooler at work or whatever. And again, that's still just partial truth. And when you can expose yourself to a completely new idea and then poke it and see if you believe it or not, I don't know, test it out. That is what this show is about. Today's guest I had recommended by listeners. And again, if you guys got people you want us to do, we've talked about everything from ancient Nephilim giants to, we talk about flat earth cosmology. We've talked about rapture theology and when stuff might have happened. We talk about just about everything on here. We talked about demons, a whole episode on demons with somebody that's dedicated his life to casting those out of people and dealing with that process. Fascinating stuff. So you can go through all of that at theflyoverapp.com, and that's censored free. You won't find us on YouTube most of the time. We've lost 6 YouTube channels talking about the things that we do, but makes for great conversations. And you got to wonder why they would want this stuff deleted. But today's guest, recommended by fellow listeners, and I started watching his short form videos on TikTok and different places, and I'm like, that is interesting, next. And you watch one, that's interesting, next. And I'm so excited to do deep dives on some stuff that makes you go, He has over 610,000 followers, 16.7 million likes on the videos that he has created. He comes from the great nation just straight north of here called Canada, and anxious to talk to Mr. Filip Zieba. The man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, David. An absolute pleasure. So excited to get into this with you. We got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Oh, the challenge was narrowing it down. We started getting into, what do we do? And we decided let's just narrow it down just to things here on the Earth and things that like architectural and digs and finds. And I think the listeners are going to be blown away because there's going to be some stuff you're going to talk about today they probably have never heard of, have never seen, and kind of, I don't know if it falls into conspiracies. It's just like, you know what? Hey, that's there. Who put it there and what is it? I think there's some stuff that'll definitely make people scratch their chins. Tell us real quick, how did you get into this, and kind of when did you know, like, hey, I really enjoy research. I really enjoy studying. Were you a great student?
To be honest, yeah, I actually was. Back in high school, I was straight up an A student. Like I killed it within all the subjects. I mean, what really brought me into this was like I just wanted to find something that I'm genuinely passionate about and just do something about it. Like it's something that I do in my spare time now, just kind of mock up these videos and edit them, do research and post them online. I mean, my whole life I've been the kid watching Discovery Channel or History Channel at night. Or then eventually moved into YouTube, now even like Rumble and TikTok, and all these like factual space or history or science topics always interested me. And then naturally I kind of went down these kind of the more conspiracy, whatever you want to call it, rabbit hole. And I mean, it's just they're just so fun to research, so fun to talk about. It does not feel like work to me. Anytime I see a cool conspiracy about history or ancient civilizations or even about space or the universe or whatever it be, I'm just so excited to just hop on Google or even DuckDuckGo, whatever it takes to find the information that I need to find, because we know you can't find everything with Google nowadays anyway. So yeah, it's so fun for me. I love doing it. It's an absolute blast for me, and it really digs down to who I've always been my whole life ever since I was a kid. It's just like this kind of this space and universe and science just fascinated me ever since I was a kid.
So people can go directly to your videos. Go to philspixel.com. And Phil, it's at F-I-L-S, Pixel, P-I-X-E-L, philspixel.com. And I just warn you, it's a time machine to like 2 hours from now, because you'll watch one and you're like, that was weird. Let's watch, or you'll grab your wife or somebody and, babe, come look at this, and it's just interesting stuff that's so fast and so efficient and fun. And I'm anxious to kind of start diving down these, because you make it interesting, you make it engaging, and throw in a little humor with it as you go. And it's really enjoyable. It's a lot, it's a lot of fun. So
yeah, let me tell you, if you like even one of my videos, I could guarantee you you'll like all of them. You either love them or you hate them. There's no really in between with mine. So I mean, I've been told a lot of times I've been getting a lot of hate in the comments and in the DMs, but I'm also getting a lot of love. People saying, hey man, I just binge watched all of your videos. Awesome. So figure out which side you're on by watching just a single video.
I saw Justin Bieber one time in an interview, and he was talking to I think he was doing like carpool karaoke or one of these things, and he said his video, I think it's called Baby. It was one of his first ones. It's one of the most watched videos in the history of YouTube. And but it also won an award. It was the most disliked video in the history of YouTube. Won an award, and I'm like, it kind of goes hand in hand, and that's
exactly.
Just kind of when you put yourself out there. And we're gonna have a blast. We got 11 topics that we're gonna get into today. Hopefully, we're gonna get through them all and bust through this and blow some minds. Let's start out right out of the gates. 7 ancient wonders of the world. That's a topic. I mean, in school, they talk about the 7 wonders of the world and what were they? But I don't know. A lot of people really remember them, and they probably couldn't list all 7. So let's jump into there, and I'm ready to start taking notes.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of people actually get mixed up. 7 ancient wonders of the world are actually different than the 7 current wonders of the world, which I actually don't even know what they are. I think it's like Niagara Falls and Machu Picchu or something. I actually don't know the regular wonders of the world. So people, when they hear ancient wonders of the world, they're kind of like, oh, I've never
Might be
what is
like
that?
Dallas, Texas Stadium with their giant scoreboard. I don't know what it is anymore. It's probably
exactly. So I'm not even sure what the regular ones. And there's also the man-made wonders of the world, which is like Eiffel Tower and stuff. So I don't know. I don't know about those. I haven't really looked into those. So the 7 ancient wonders of the world are these monuments, these structures that were built, thousands, maybe even a couple hundred, up to like thousands of years ago by these ancient civilizations, and they were just an absolute pinnacles of architecture and human design during the time. So the first one on the list is probably the most famous one. Everyone's heard about this one. Is the okay? We'll start. We'll start with this one because I was going to say pyramids of Giza. It's a pretty good start. This one, what we're looking at right here, actually, is the statue of Zeus in Olympia. This is how it currently looks like. So one thing about these 7 ancient wonders of the world is the Pyramid of Giza is both the oldest one and it's yet the only one that's still standing. So it kind of goes to show how well built these pyramids were. So I mean, everyone knows the Great Pyramid of Giza is this giant, triangle of brick and rock pointing into the sky. And what people actually didn't know, well, may not know, was that it's thought to have been that the Great Pyramids of Giza used to be entirely covered in limestone, which has since been stripped away due to erosion, deterioration, or just straight up grave robbers taking the limestone. So how the Pyramids of Giza used to look like, it was just a giant pyramid of just white bricks facing into the sky. And especially in something like in the Egyptian sun, something like that would have looked absolutely epic in the sand. I mean, right now the Egyptian pyramids are the same color as the sand, so they still look incredible as they stand.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the color is kind of the same as the rest of the backdrop, whereas they used to be these enormous white structures of sandstone, and at the very top it was even said to have been topped with a golden tip at the very top of the pyramids.
Wow.
And no, everyone, I mean, there's different conversations as to what that tip could have been. It could have been okay, so here we have the ancient pyramids. That's how it used to look like. So, and that's how it used to look like before. It was how it currently looks like. And
so
I mean,
what
there's a lot of
happened? Do you know what happened to the coating? Do the people come along and take it like rims on a car, or what?
Yeah, something like that, or just deterioration. I think apparently this limestone needs to be polished and taken care of in order for it to maintain.
Okay.
It wasn't just white, but it was also smooth. Like if you go up to the pyramids now, it's all like rocky steps that are kind of all jaggedy, like that, like how you see there. But it was smooth and it was perfectly white, just like that. And like I was saying, for the top, there's a golden tip at the top. And again, there's a lot of conversations as to what it could have been. A lot of people say, I mean, mainstream historians tell you, oh, it's just like, it's just a nice adornment to the top, to kind of like a tribute to the gods, give gold to the gods, or whatever, wherever it may be. And then there are also some other conversations that say that, gold is a conductor of electricity. Maybe it somehow harnessed electricity from the sky and was able to distribute that energy within the pyramids. And these pyramids were like great batteries of some sort. And I mean, there's that whole discussion about that. And I mean, it's like, why'd they use gold? Again, both sides of the argument kind of make sense. It could have just been like a nice, adorning it with a nice kind of a look. Like, all the Egyptian pharaohs were dressed up in gold and looked all shiny and bright and, all glamorous and everything. And obviously these gold tips are the first things to go when grave robbers or whoever comes along, they see a gold tip, they're climbing right up to that thing, snatching as much gold as they can take. So clearly that it's obvious that could not have survived over, 4,000 years as it has.
Later in our talk, are we going to go do more on the pyramids of Giza, or is this it here? Because I have some questions on them with the depth and look and structure of them. I think we may come back to that a little bit later as well. Do you want to stick on this list of the 7 ancients?
Yeah, we will definitely come back to the pyramids of Giza.
Good.
Yeah, it's just the best. It's the best one to start with out of these 7 ancient wonders because it's the one everyone knows and it's the one that's still standing.
Yeah, that's big. They've always been a cause of fascination for people. There's this such a rich history to them. And again, you always kind of come up against this thing. In school they was kind of pitch evolution, and we kind of came from nothing to something, and it's kind of like, almost in some ways feels almost like we're devolving in some ways, like our technology is getting better and our people are getting dumber, as we go along, the kind of things that we can do. And you look back, it's like, if we can't do it now, then how did we evolve so much from somebody that could do stuff we can't do?
Yeah, because it's like a lot, like everyone thinks that like the evolution of technology is linear. Like if we did this back here, we should be able to do this at this time, then this at this time. Like they picture a linear progression of technology. But the thing is, like these ancient civilizations in the past could have easily been on a different trajectory of technology that isn't really rooted in how we currently use technology, with our current use of like electricity and concrete and glass buildings and whatnot. Could have had a different route than what these Egyptian civilizations could have been making. So I mean, the fact that they were able to make these incredible monuments, which like I believe we could barely even make these monuments today with using modern cranes and dump trucks and whatnot. I mean, again, it's at this point it just becomes more of a logistical issue. It's like, why make these crazy huge pyramids with stone bricks when we have, you know, a 10 times easier way to make them in across the world? You have like the Bass Pro Shops or the Luxor in
Right.
Vegas. I mean, they're pyramids, but they were made using modern methods, modern technology. They poured concrete in an efficient manner to create this shape. So why create pyramids using these raw stone blocks like we used to, if it's just such a waste of time and manpower, which is the reason why we don't make them today. But even then, like even using we would need like the most like craziest of today's technology in order to lay those bricks on top of each other. So the fact that these Egyptians were able to figure it out, you know, 4,000 years ago or whatever, could essentially tell us that they may have had a different trajectory of development of their technology that they would have followed if their civilization continued to proliferate through the ages and continued on in that direction. Or maybe something was lost. Maybe they had some sort of secret methods or ways of building these pyramids that just was somehow lost along the way. I mean, to this day, we have no idea how they made it. They have no records. That's another thing. Ancient Egyptians, like they recorded every aspect of their lives in their hieroglyphs, everything, like how they cultivated, you know, like barley from you know, plants, how they like plowed their fields, how they like worship their gods, but not a single hieroglyph depicts the creation of pyramids. Like not a single one. They do have some hieroglyphs that show how they kind of made bricks, you know, and that's as far as it goes, but not a single out of the thousands of hieroglyphs all over Egypt, not a single one depicts how the actual pyramids were built. And I mean, the fact that they left out the most significant, you know, achievement in their civilization's history in their, you know, tablets, in their way of recording things, either means that all of them just somehow got destroyed coincidentally, or maybe they were intentionally destroyed, or maybe they didn't even make them and they didn't record it because they were not the ones that made the pyramids, so they had no way of recording something that they didn't make.
Right. There's a lot of arguments whether they were built or found.
Exactly. So that's, you know, that's part of the argument here. It's like they can't record how they made something that they didn't make. So maybe they found them and then they started etching all these carvings into them and worshiping worshiping the gods, and, you know, creating these hieroglyphs of how they, you know, make their way through every other area of life.
It's interesting, and again, that makes it so interesting because they're there. They're just standing there defiantly, like, "Hey, you know, figure me out." And the world's been trying it ever since. So that's fascinating. All right, let's keep moving on that list.
Yeah, let's go in. So next up, we have the let's pull up the list here. Okay, we'll go to Colossus of Rhodes. There we go. Thank you. Let's bring this up here. So this is how it currently looks. It is just I believe this is in Greece. I would say it's just a canal, a river canal. You know, just looks like a standard, you know, Greek city. And then so back in the day, it's said to have that this statue is said to have been there. This is the Colossus of Rhodes. And again, there's a lot of dispute and argument as to how this statue actually was. A lot of people say that it wasn't actually this big. That the spacing between the 2 feet is way too far for a statue like this to actually be, you know, structurally sound. But there was some sort of massive statue called the Colossus of Rhodes. It could have been smaller than this, who knows? But there was some sort of statue standing there. It lasted for about a couple hundred years, and then of course an earthquake took it down. I mean, just look at it. It's so like it's so like meticulously crafted that I can't imagine it's surviving an earthquake if there ever was an earthquake there.
What was it made of? Do you know? Or at least reportedly.
No, not entirely.
I don't know if is it metals, or because it seemed like you would need like rebars or reinforcement or, you know, something.
Oh no, this was all stone. It was either stone or like ivory or granite or limestone. Like this was made in the BC era. It was made a long time ago. I mean, again, yeah, I know something like this. It's hard to imagine this thing standing with like rebar, some sort of like metal structure within. But
like what would it be like compared to like the Statue of Liberty or something, like size wise? Do you know? Like how big is this thing?
So according to this depiction of it, which, you know, it could be accurate or could not, it was probably around the same size as the Statue of Liberty, which we know is made
Goodness sakes.
from metal, from copper, I believe. And you know, that thing is going to, the Statue of Liberty is going to survive for a while just because it is made with metal. Back then there was no way of making these giant statues with just metal. I believe they had bronze. Wow. There may have been bronze incorporated with this, but yeah, it was just a massive statue that eventually got toppled, clearly because of how, you know, how it's shaped due to an earthquake. So I mean, this would have been a marvel to see in real life.
Goodness sakes. Okay, that would be a wonder.
Then next up, Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So this one we don't even know if it actually existed. This one is the one that's kind of like there's no remaining remnants of it at all.
It's a famous one. We've heard about it a lot.
Exactly. It is a famous one. I believe it's even mentioned in the Bible a couple of times. This one is in somewhere in the Iran region. And again, this was just a palace in the middle of a desert, a palace with many layers of just like palm trees and gardens and just like luscious waterfalls made of like ivory and this crazy, you know, super lavish, super glamorous material for like a king or an emperor back in the day. But this is the only one that we have zero kind of remnants of left in this world. This is the one that's kind of like questioned if it even was there or not, but it's mentioned in so many texts, so many ancient texts, that we do believe it to be real, just because there are these records of this existing. But again, this just got they don't even really know why it got toppled. It I don't think it was an earthquake, but it just no longer exists anymore. It could have just been completely ransacked by, you know, the next culture that took over.
And the ability to grow something that's green and fertile and is watered and is, you know, a living organism, basically, again, kind of defiantly standing in the middle of a desert, you know, as an oasis. It shows man's will versus nature in a powerful way. I mean, it would take a lot of will and probably a lot of involuntary helpers.
Yeah, and it had a complete like irrigation system. Like there was like waterfalls, streaming water in it. Like there was like self watering, you know, systems. Which back then, this is like like thousands of years ago. That something like that is unheard of. They had these irrigation systems that kept these gardens, these plants, and these like, you know, luscious trees alive in the middle of a desert, which truly makes it, you know, a wonder of the world.
Unbelievable. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Lighthouse of Alexandria. This one was by Egypt. Again, like the rest of these, they got toppled by an earthquake. So again, this was just a lighthouse, an old school lighthouse, and they used actually fire. So back in the day, obviously we had no electricity, we had no way of doing light. So they actually, during the day, they had a giant mirror in the lighthouse that would reflect the sun, and they would use the reflection of the sun as the light in the lighthouse to like direct and navigate boats. And then at night, they would actually have to fuel it all night with a fire. And then again, they would use the mirror in front of the fire to direct that light and use it as a lighthouse. And again, this just got completely toppled by an earthquake, as these all do.
It seems to be a trend. Okay.
I know. Yeah. Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. This was I believe it was a tomb built for an emperor in somewhere in the Babylonian region. Again, I can't remember off the top of my head, but again, this was a beautiful, you know, constructed tomb with like statues adorned with gold and ivory and all these things. And again, it just got toppled by an earthquake. I mean, you'll see this pattern repeating a lot. So it happens a lot when you build something, and I guess you don't take the structural integrity into account. This one is one of my favorites right here, is a statue of Zeus. So that's how it used to look like. It was this massive statue, and again, there are arguments as to how big it really was, similar to the Colossus of Rhodes. And if you go to the statue once again, you can see the enormous scale of it. You see all the people down there, and this thing was just completely made of like marble and ivory and gold. It had Zeus had a statue of Nike, which is the goddess of victory, named after the shoe brand, or the shoe brand was named after it.
Yeah,
and then a massive golden set. I think the shoes came after, right? And then a massive golden scepter in the other. And again, this was just an incredible just achievement of just like of architecture and design. just completely adorned with gold and all these, lavish materials. And again, once again, got toppled by an earthquake. That picture we actually saw at the beginning was how it currently looks like. So it's just a bunch of ruins in the middle of.
This is
Greece.
what the seven wonders of the world looked like if they existed
there
again. Pyramid of...
Yeah, so there was. So yeah, that one again. All these kind of like intricate, massive statues that were built back then were just get destroyed by earthquakes, I guess. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the statue of Lincoln in wherever that is located. Not sure the exact location, but it is built in a similar fashion of that. But I'm guessing it's just not as big, or the Lincoln statue just has a better integrity.
We used to live in Nashville, and Nashville's kind of known of being like the Athens of the South is what they call it. There's I think 17 universities there, and it's kind of big on that. But they have a Parthenon. Have you ever been to Nashville, Tennessee? There's a replica to scale of the Greek Parthenon, and inside it they have a giant Athena statue in there of the goddess Athena with a small. Yeah, there's a picture of it with a small.
This is in Nashville?
Nashville, Tennessee. And it's unbelievable, looking the intricate detail that they went through in creating that. And inside of it, they have this statue of Athena with a little Nike there,
Oh, wow.
with them. And it's unbelievably big and large. And I'm not sure why there would have been the motivation, for them in Nashville to do it. There's a lot of the really old money, the Vanderbilt money, the Vanderbilt vacation home that was built in Asheville, North Carolina it's the biggest residential home in North America still today. And it created a whole city around it when they built it, just from the economy that was created from all the workers, from building this home. It was their vacation home. The Vanderbilts, I think, lived up in New York, I believe, but they built this vacation home in North Carolina. But then they founded Vanderbilt University in Nashville. So it's like this kind of old school, railroad tycoon kind of wealth, is just unbelievable. But I don't know what the motivation would have been for a giant Athena statue that was built and created in there. But I think it's a similar kind of mock-up in size and in scale. I doubt there's the amount of gold and everything with it, but it's still
that thing, I'd never even seen that. That's strikingly similar to the statue of Zeus. I mean, it's incredible they were able to build that in Nashville. And again, I think it's more of like a symbol of like strength, just like, hey, look what we can do. This is how much, this is how many resources we have. We could build this giant statue right here. And it's impressive though.
It's hard to fathom, that kind of money before there was like, the inheritance taxes and the kind of things where they could kind of pass on massive wealth untaxed from one generation, to the next. They hadn't figured out how to clean everybody out from scratch on each generation like they do.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they do now quite as much. All right. The Temple of Artemis.
Temple of Artemis. Yeah, again, this one was another like this Artemis. I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, but this one was incredible. It had like look at all the pillars there. Those pillars fill up the entire inside of the temple too. Those are like hundreds of pillars made holding up this massive, enormous roof, and it like creating something like this would have been like a logistical nightmare, but they managed to do it, and they did it. And again, once again, a beautiful earthquake took it down, and now we have a bunch of ruins. I mean, with this temple, we actually do have proof that it did exist. We do have the ruins still kind of standing around there in, I believe, again, this is Greece. Most of these are in Greece, and we do see proof of it that it used to stand. But yeah, again, this was just an incredible, building of architecture and design.
Wow. Okay. Was that all? Was that 7? So we went 7.
We got through all them clusters of roads. Yeah, we actually did. Yeah, that was all 7 of the ancient ones.
It's interesting when you look at these things, like in the moment, somebody's creating something that I'm sure it is so epic and so off the chart. And it kind of shows you like where your ego should be as you go through life. It's like, because think of this, we're talking about these things in a blip fashion. Some of these, we don't really know who built it, who was it to, why, like, look at the things we get hung up on and our ego gets attached to today. Like, I'm the vice president of marketing at this, car dealership, or something. It's like there's no monuments built. Even if there are, they all rust and go away. It's kind of an interesting thing that, like, to keep it in perspective, like none of us are that big of a deal. You might as well like exhale and just, don't be a jerk and like be nice to people. And, because you're going to be dead and forgotten and nobody really cares, It's like, hey, don't be a jerk, while you're alive. Because even if you have something like that built, they're going to be trying to figure out who you even are in the future.
Exactly. And I mean, the biggest like constructions of our modern day civilization, like, I don't know, the Empire State Building or the Burj Khalifa, or even right behind me, the CN Tower, have been around for literally a fraction of the moment that these other structures have been up for.
Right.
So like some of these things, like perhaps maybe the Temple of Artemis could have been up for hundreds and hundreds of years before eventually it got toppled. And now today to us, it's almost irrelevant. It's such an irrelevant thing. It's like, oh, cool, there was this structure that it got toppled. Yeah, big deal. But it was up for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it was like for hundreds of years, it was like this front and center to all of civilization. Hey, this thing is here. It's like it's going to be here forever. Is basically what everyone thought. Meanwhile, we have like the Empire State Building that got built like maybe 100 years. I don't even know how long that got built ago. Maybe less than 100 years ago. I don't know. I don't know much about that. But like, again, to us that
1930s.
is like. Yeah, so exactly. To us, that is something that is like the hallmark of architecture. That's something that's going to last forever. But it literally hasn't even lasted a fraction of what these other ancient structures have lasted for. So who knows? There might be an earthquake or some global cataclysm that takes that out soon too. So nothing is permanent. Everything that we have now that is considered the pinnacle of architecture and achievement could be gone like that and forgotten in a couple hundred years.
Are you having a hard time sleeping at night, thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
Times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. Today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a deflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for your free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did. Our family just went to Israel for 10 days and toured and went through, Jerusalem, and you're all looking at these things, and like, we were in the first temple and the second temple and the third temple. Like, it's like these are little blips, but all of those were around longer than America's been around.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like just a little, like a footnote in the historical reference. And it's like all of them were longer than America. So, we have this feeling sometimes, of, well, this could never go away, and we can take all these things for granted, and all that. It's like, we're like just a baby civilization, country wise, compared to Roman Empire or so many of these that have come before us. That I think everybody needs to kind of like just be a little more humble and appreciative, and like, hey, how can we save this and not think there's nobody trying to tear this down and move on and have us be a one world global government. It's like, yeah, they are. Yeah. Because they always do. That's the whole story, of the world, is things are rising and people are trying to take it over and turn it into a globalist.
And it's a constant cycle. It's happened all throughout history, but people have this tendency, me included, like, it's like, if you're living in it, you kind of feel like it can't happen to me, right? It's that, right. That was in the past where, like, countries get taken over by other countries and war happens. That's all in the past. We're done with that. And I mean, like, the Egyptian Empire lasted for literally thousands of years, whereas the American Empire has been around for like 300. So
yeah, it's
like,
nothing.
Again, it's a fraction of how long they've lasted for. And for some reason, just because we're living in it, just because it's me here right now, I feel like, oh, this has to last forever. Or if it topples, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. It's going to happen in the future. People always think like that, but it could happen whenever.
Which eventually leads you into being a lost civilization. So number 2 of our 11, we got advanced lost civilizations. So let's do a deep dive on advanced lost civilizations.
Okay, this one is a deep one. Okay, advanced
What
lost
is that?
civilizations.
Looks like a giant
So
poop emoji made of bricks in the middle of nowhere.
yeah, so this is actually one of the first pyramids in modern history ever made, called the Pyramid of Djoser in Egypt. And
Okay.
as you see, take note of the step pattern of this pyramid. This is what they call a step pyramid. It's not like slanted sides like that. It's kind of like
Okay.
you see like steps going up like that. So this style of pyramid is somehow found everywhere, all over the world, all corners of the world. Civilizations that are in our history books had no contact among each other somehow built this exact same style of pyramid. And again, their kind of
Wow.
historians' rationalization behind that is saying, oh, it's just, it's the most natural structure humans want to make if they want to make something tall, which could be true. I mean, back then you couldn't, it was more difficult to build, a straight up tower like the Empire State Building or the CN Tower as it is now. They didn't have the materials and the methods to make that now. So if they ever wanted to make something tall, it would have to be this kind of like this elevated gradual pattern,
Right.
which the step pyramid becomes. But again, people say like, what are the chances that all these humans, different cultures all around the world? So here's a map actually of the world, and these are all different locations where pyramids are located in the world. And so we have, the old world, which is kind of like, Africa, Asia, Middle East area. Then we have the new world, which is the Americas. And there's both pyramids in both areas. So again, these two cultures, these like opposing cultures, all had no contact, no communication with each other. And they somehow just managed to build the same thing. So, I mean, this is the first thing that towards the hypothesis of that all these cultures somehow had some unified knowledge that made them build these structures, in a similar fashion. Here we have Chichen Itza right before we had Cholula, and those are in Mexico. So that one's Chichen Itza before it's Cholula. So these ones are the ones that are in Mexico in the kind of the Mesoamerican area with the Aztecs, the Mayans. They built those. Go one more further again. We actually had a good one right there. So yeah, these are all Mexico. So this one is actually, this is not an official pyramid. I mean, this one is a hill in Bosnia, so which is in Europe, and there have been many studies done on this hill that show that it has the characteristics of a pyramid. And it's not just one hill, there's multiple of these hills. So when civilizations build these structures, they typically don't just build one standing on its own and that's it. They build them in clusters. You look at the pyramids of Giza, and you have the three in a row famous pyramids right there. So the same thing with this is that there's similarly structured hills right beside this one here that look the same, and they're aligned perfectly to true north. So I don't know if you know about this, but with the Pyramid of Giza is aligned within like less than a degree of accuracy to perfectly true north. And
so they must have had iPhones or something, some way to be able to,
or a compass,
some kind of an app.
Yeah, exactly. They busted out their iPhones and they had the compass app open. I mean, again, a lot of people say they couldn't have done that unless they actually had a compass, which the compass wasn't invented 2,000 years later, after the pyramids of Giza were made by the Chinese 2,000 years later, or they had some sort of aerial view of Earth, which allowed them to see, oh, hey, this is where true north is. We know how to shape our pyramids. And again, how would they have that aerial view if they didn't have any, flying apparatus or any way to, elevate themselves to a higher altitude? So this pyramid in Bosnia, there's actually a group of archaeologists that studied it, and every single one of them, or almost every single one of them, claimed like, hey, this is not a naturally forming hill. There's something man-made about this. This is not naturally forming. And they wanted to study it and uncover it. And then the Bosnian government strangely just halted study on this. They said, sorry, guys, you're not allowed to do this anymore. And they stopped all further research on this. And I mean, if you look at every pyramid in the past that we've ever uncovered in Mesoamerica, for example, Chichen Itza, it was completely overgrown. It looked exactly like this. It was completely overgrown with vegetation. So that's how it looks like now. But before it was uncovered, it was completely overgrown with vegetation in the middle of the jungle. It looked like a hill in the jungle. If we just said that about Chichen Itza, oh, it's just a hill, don't worry about it, we would have never discovered this.
Well, and it's not even that oh, you can't see this monument. It's like, what about the whole people group that this represented? And the messages and the carvings and the art and the things that are within it and things that are about it. Like, you learn so much. Isn't the biggest pyramid in the world still kind of somewhat covered in Mexico?
Exactly. So officially, the biggest pyramid of the world is the Pyramid of Giza. Then we have the actual this one that you're talking about, which is the Great Pyramid of Cholula in Mexico, which is
Okay.
still, it's not fully. That's the one. So this is like kind of the base of the pyramid, and it's not fully uncovered.
It's just
they
fairly
say-
recently, I think. Is
yeah,
that right?
I'm pretty sure it was recently. Graham Hancock actually did a lot of investigation on this, I think a couple of years back, and they did like these radio analysis of this pyramid, and they realized that it goes deeper underground, and even the top of it is covered. And if they were to fully excavate the whole thing, it would have been even bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. So this is actually the biggest pyramid in the world. But then that pyramid in Bosnia actually tops this one. So that pyramid in Bosnia would have been even bigger than this one. And so that just even tops. So there you go. So that right there is Chichen Itza, how it looked like when they first found it. I mean, it is a little bit more exposed there. You see the top of it. So you see
it's like one of those shows like the Fixer Upper, where the yard's overgrown, and the before and after. It's like, hey, this is like a flip your pyramid.
Yeah, exactly. They give it a nice trim, and then it looks amazing all of a sudden. But like just like that, it looked like a hill. I mean, to be fair, to give them the credit, it had that little box kind of peeking out through the top, but who knows, maybe they excavated that part first or something. But yeah, it looks like a hill. It looks just like the Bosnian pyramid, and that Bosnian pyramid, again, they did their carbon dating analysis on it, which tells you how old it was, and they studies showed that it was over 35,000 years old, which is older, way older than what we claim the pyramids to be, way older than what we claim any pyramid to be. And yeah, that's another view of it. I mean, just look at it. Like, it doesn't really look natural to me, but what do I know? I'm not a geologist.
They just let the place just get so run down. It's like one of your old favorite restaurants, and you go back and you're like, this used to be so nice. This used to be such a nice pyramid. And now the whole neighborhood's gone to crap. Look at this.
It actually is the whole neighborhood, because all the neighboring pyramids happen. Same thing happened to them too. And I mean, if it was made 35,000 years ago, yeah, 35,000 years is going to completely cover it up, and like deep underground. Like, we have no idea the effect that time has on these structures. Wait just a couple thousand years and it's already overrun. Now wait a couple tens of thousands of years and it's barely visible anymore.
Just bad government policies. They probably, somebody like Joe Biden came along and then just everything. I just made that part up myself. There's no historical reference to that.
And but the government did halt further study on this, and again they just said, "Oh, it's just a waste of time. There's nothing to see here." Again, whenever they say that, I don't know. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're not.
All right. So what is this?
Oh God, they all look the same to me. I mean, this might be the one in Cambodia. I mean, I'm like so this is the one in Cambodia. Yeah, clearly I'm an expert on pyramids. I mean, they also, this actually goes to show how similar they looked. I mean, this culture in Cambodia built a pyramid that's almost identical to this pyramid in Mexico, and they're worlds apart. They had no contact among each other, allegedly. This is Kokor in Cambodia. Again, this is like kind of before they started trimming it down. It was a little bit overrun, and then they cleaned it up, and now it looks a lot better. But again, these step pyramids are just found everywhere. You go in different places. This one's a bit different. This one is not a step pyramid, but it's actually the question here is, how in the world did they build a entire temple into a cliffside? So this entire temple is built into so it's like they take a cliffside and you build a temple into it, and then so the tools they had back then were not even capable of being able to carve something like this to the amount of detail that they put into this. And so
it's a big giant chunk of rock. It's just it's a solid rock hill, and then
like a cliffside, and
like a cliff, and then they just chiseled away everything that wasn't going to be their temple
into it. And it's a temple with hallways, with rooms, with everything, and it was built into a cliffside. And again, it's questioned like how they do it. They say like, oh, they use these tools, they use these techniques to use their little bronze hammer to cut this into place. But then it's just like we see examples of this like precision cutting technology on the hardest material in the world, like granite. Granite actually is one of the hardest materials in the world, and that's why we need like diamond tipped drill tips to this day to cut through granite, because that's one of the only things that can cut through it.
Unbelievable.
And so back then they had bronze tools. Bronze is weaker than granite. Bronze would shatter into pieces if they try to shape it with granite. And so we have so many samples of this style of building, of masonry around the world, where they built these incredibly like perfectly accurate structures. Like they have direct, perfect right angles in like the pyramids, at the boxes at the Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt. And it's like these giant, like 80-ton, I believe, boxes that were said to be like tombs for humans. And these boxes are way too big for a human to even fit in. And then so their reasoning for that was, it's a tomb for a bull. They made this giant tomb weighing over 100 tons, perfectly cut into perfect right angles for a bull, which kind of doesn't make sense to me. Why would they do that for, even if it was a sacred bull? I mean, it's a lot of work to do for that. But yeah, they have all these examples of this cutting through insanely tough material and having perfectly cut angles of it.
So is this still in our section of advanced lost civilizations, or are we into the buried?
No, this is all advanced lost civilizations. So here we have the Kailash temple. That was a temple that I was showing you early. This is how it was cut into the cliffside. So yeah, there you go. You see that it was literally just a cliff, and they cut it into the ground, and they craft this incredible temple into the ground like that. So yeah, it was amazing. Oh, this one's an interesting one. This one is the Yonaguni Monument, which is actually sunken underwater off the coast of Japan. And
oh my goodness!
So then, I mean, a lot. So taken that their explanation for this is that it's natural. They're trying to say that this was naturally formed.
Yeah.
This is nothing to be concerned of. It's naturally forming. It's some sort of
very natural for them to be lying.
Yeah, some sort of geological process cut these rocks into these perfect shapes. And so this is if they dated the stones here, and they date back to like 10,000 BC, which again is older than the pyramids, older than like even like civilization itself. We claim that civilization started around 4,000 to 6,000 BC in the Iran-Iraq region with Mesopotamia. So this one would go far beyond, way older than that even. And so this is sunken off the coast of Japan, somewhere off the coast of Japan, close to Taiwan, I believe, and it's fully underwater, which actually goes hand in hand with the theory of these great global floods kind of flooding over civilizations, and civilizations having to reset and restart from the beginning. So yeah, this one just laying down there, and again, it's another marvel.
Look at how little that guy is compared to that. I mean, that is a monstrous structure.
I mean, it could be argued whether this actually is in the step pyramid fashion or not, but given how like fallen apart it is, like it's clearly there's pieces missing. It's an old monument, so who knows how it looked like before. But again, it has a very rigid, not natural looking structure, and it's buried or sunken deep within the ocean.
Right.
So, yeah. And then here we have the distance. So here we have it's showing how far these pyramids and these structures were made in one area of the world, and where they were made in the other area of the world. This is over 11,000 kilometers. I'm not sure what the miles are. I'm Canadian. I use kilometers. Whatever the miles conversion of that is. They were just, these cultures had no contact between each other. Is basically the point here, and they managed to build like identical buildings here. And I mean, yeah, and
again, the name of this episode is just things that make you go, And I think that's what you do such a great job of highlighting. And I just want to kind of, this is like a rapid fire to a whole bunch of topics and places and things within this world that you go back and it's like, okay, when was that and how far back? The only thing that I ever really walk away from this knowing is I don't think we have an accurate, truthful document of our history. Like there's a lot of things that have happened within this world that I go back and look at and think, how does that fit in with this, fit in with this, fit in with this in the timeline that we're pitched? And it just does not make sense most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, like seriously, like the majority of civilization has gone unrecorded, or it's recorded with old text like hieroglyphs, and hieroglyphs are just us doing our best to interpret what these hieroglyphs mean. There's also this other Sumerian recording method called cuneiform, which is just a bunch of like random sticks and shapes molded into clay tablets. And again, we have our best interpretation of what this text may mean, but again, we're not 100% sure of what it means. And then on top of that, I'm pretty sure like over 95% of everything that we've recorded before in history has been lost, whether it got lost with an earthquake or it just got shattered. These things were written on stone tablets. They didn't have data centers back then. If you smash and shatter the stone tablet, that information is gone forever.
and lost and rewritten. You know, the comedian Norm Macdonald had a funny way of putting it. He said, I went back and kind of looking throughout history, and kind of interesting, the good guys always won.
Exactly. You wonder why.
And it's like, we all know history is, history is always written by the winner. But it's not only just written, but it's rewritten, and it's always written from the perspective of who wanted it written. So it's interesting. And then when you find these things in different continents, they couldn't have communicated with each other. It's like, what's going on? All right, Phil, what in the heck is this?
Here, this is called the Al Nasla rock. It's in Saudi Arabia. This kind of goes back to the whole, how did we cut through these insanely tough material with this incredible accuracy? It looks like a laser beam just cut right through this rock. But again, the explanation of this is it's naturally forming. I don't know how, but it's naturally somehow was formed, and it is, again, thousands of years old. And it goes back to this idea, just going back to the Kailash temple, that Indian temple built within the cliffside. It's like, how on earth did they build these intricate, crazy detailed monuments? And even this isn't like an intricate monument, but it is almost a perfectly straight line cut through an enormous rock. Look how small that person is. That's a person at the bottom there, and they somehow cut this perfectly straight line through this rock.
Clearly not natural and clearly not duplicatable.
I mean, according to the historians, it's natural. So who knows? Who knows who's right here? Maybe they're the crazy ones. Maybe we are.
All right, Flyover family, I hope you're just catching all these things. It's like, do your own research. Now you're looking at this, and Philip's sitting here, and he's like, yeah, but what about that? And you're kind of like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. That Rubik's Cube analogy is perfectly
somebody did this.
What we're doing here. Yeah, exactly. Like, we're showing you the different side of the Rubik's Cube, and it's like, hey, you could look it up yourself, do your own research, or just even don't, and just live in wonder. I mean, there's nothing wrong with living in wonder either. I mean, but don't be clinging to one side of the Rubik's Cube and being like, no, this is exactly how it is. I know it is because my history book told me it's this way.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
We will shut you down. We will cite you. And if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
God actually spoke to me. He spoke about sacredness. He said to me, Kim, what I place in many, many people is sacred. And if anybody touches what is sacred to me, then it is the end for them. So what I've done in the United States of America is sacred. And there are people on every side that are trying to destroy what I deem sacred. And it's not going to happen.
This is the definition of criminal conspiracy, racketeering, and collusion. This is not a theory. This is evidence.
Because I have upheld this country to spread a light to the rest of the world. When you choose to go against the sacred thing that God put into the very heart and the soil of this nation, this was sacred to God.
This ReAwaken tour is literally what it means. It has reawakened the American heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good to the only things that you know or think you know are the things you've been told.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever it is, if you're getting a diagnosis from a doctor, you know what? The last 2 years have really taught us. You probably should get a second opinion, and hopefully it disagrees with the first one a little bit and you kind of make an intelligent choice, but you'd better own your own healthcare. You better make your own decisions, about whatever it is that you're talking about. You'd better own your own information and dig into this yourself. Is that the end of the advanced civilizations? We're moving into the next one?
I actually have one more. So one more.
Okay.
This one's my favorite one. Is the Barabar Caves. Search up the Barabar Caves if we get that going. It's these perfectly cut doorways that were cut into stone, just like cliff sides, and then they made a cave into them, and then the accuracy of these doorways, and these doorways were made thousands of years before even the Kailash temple. So these are even older. I mean, it's a very simple kind of design and structure. It's literally just a doorway, but it is perfectly cut into a cliffside. And again, no clue how we actually were able to do this. Chisel and hammer, I don't know if that would even be possible to do at something to this scale, but it is it's crazy. I mean, who knows? Maybe there was some other form of technology that we had back then that somehow got lost over time, or we got help from maybe some other civilization that was more advanced than us that somehow helped us carve these incredible structures with the hardest material known in the world.
Well, let's see if producer Colton can pull that up. Is that it? Is that the cave?
So no, these are the drill holes. The caves I was talking about is Bar caves. So these are BARA caves. And so this is actually another one. So these are drill holes that, again, are found all over the world. They're found from Massachusetts to Norway to ancient Egypt. And it's these holes that are perfectly drilled. You even see the drill lines in these holes that show kind of like the thread of a screw inside of the hole. And they're again all over the world. We have no idea how these ancient cultures, these ancient civilizations made these holes, but they clearly had some sort of advanced drilling technology that we're not aware of. Some of them are even star shaped like this one. I don't know how on earth you do that without using a diamond drill or like a laser at the very least.
Look at that.
I know. And again, it's not just in one location. They're found everywhere. This too. Like this is like almost
through stone.
And it's almost obviously a drill. And yet the carbon dating analysis on this shows that it's thousands of years old.
Unbelievable. You know, you look at that and it's like how in the world? Okay, is this the bar?
There's the cave. I mean, look at that. This was made thousands and thousands of years ago, and they just literally just saw a cliffside and they just decided to cut a cave into it. And I mean, you be the judge to think if given a certain amount of time, maybe humans, if they got together and worked on this for 500 years, they could carve this to this amount of accuracy. But to me, something like this is just amazing that they were able to make this. Like, how on earth did they build this? Did they use lasers? Did they have some advanced drilling technology that we're not aware of? Did they use a hammer and chisel to do this? I do not know, but that looks incredible to me.
Wow. You know, and a lot of this, sometimes I just kind of put mentally in this era of, there's a big chunk of the Bible when you look like Genesis chapter 6, you're talking about, you know, these fallen beings, these like angelic beings that literally like men were trading their daughters for their secrets, for their technologies, you know, the things that they knew. And it's like, okay, well, if you go with that a second, you know, it's like, well, there's a lot of technologies that could have been, you know, non-human that created giants and these Nephilim creatures. There's a lot of weird stuff like in the Bible in that section that people kind of breeze over, and that's without looking at, you know, Enoch and you know, non-canonized scriptures. When you take a chunk and it's like, well, that's just a blip there. But then we're talking large amounts of time underneath that umbrella, and you know, you're dealing with like angelic type beings is how they're described, and they're creating these offspring of giants, and again, if they're trading their own daughters for this technology, you think like if you didn't have fire and somebody had, you know, a lighter, like that would be an unbelievable technology, huge advantage. If you're fighting with your fists and throwing rocks at people, and somebody had, you know, compound bows, or had, you know, the ability to make stuff that there's a lot of writing about them making things from plants and herbs, and, you know, you could make medicines and cocaines and LSDs and hallucinogens and, you know, whatever. It's like, who knows what's all going on there, but it's kind of left a little bit to mystery and a little bit to wonder. But you see some of this stuff and you're like, well, if you're willing to trade your own daughter for a technology that somebody had, you know, maybe it was a lightsaber, you know, or something, you could just won't, like, there's no way to explain some of these things that are made with what we have now or what we think they had then. So, but yet at the end of the day, here's this thing still sitting here staring at you, and you think, how did they cut that rock with a bronze hammer and chisel? Probably didn't.
Or even if you look at the size of the bricks and the stones they moved around, One explanation of it could be we had bigger humans around back then. Maybe there was some larger humans that were much larger than what we are right now, and they were able to lift these stone blocks. Maybe you get 4 of these humans and they could lift this like stone block of Stonehenge. There you go. You have some of them here, and move it into place. That is borderline impossible for us to move now, but they could have done it with ease back then. And to think about these, giant creatures, like I believe you may have mentioned the Nephilim in the Bible. In the Bible, these giant creatures are mentioned in almost every single civilization's folklore and mythology and stories, from the Nephilim in the Bible to you go to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, back to those, and you constantly see these big beings. This one is, I believe that one's a Native American painting. So they had it too. So here are the ones. So here we have these people placing what looks like an obelisk, and these obelisks are, they're tall, and they're placing it, and they're at their height. And these types of hieroglyphs are all over, ancient Egypt. They're everywhere. These giant beings that are among the smaller beings. It's not even like everyone's big. There's a giant being, there's the smaller ones. Here's a giant, like allegedly carrying a stone brick, which they would have carried it with ease if that is to scale right there. But then they had these depictions of these giants, and then a lot of historians say, like, oh, these giant depictions are just showing perspective. It's like, oh, they're just closer to the camera than everyone else. But then it's like, some things don't make sense. We have literally these tiny humans like cleaning the feet of these giants, and it's like, It's not a statue, it's a giant that's like performing something or doing something. Or in the case of before, these giants literally placing Egyptian obelisks into place. And it doesn't end in Egypt. It's again all everywhere. You go to Mayan, Aztec and Mayan carvings, and they have the same thing. They have these big creatures, these big humans, not even creatures, these big humans that are living among the smaller humans, and they're allegedly, it seems like they're almost helping them build these structures and even build society in general. And I mean, again, if you have civilizations in Egypt, in the Mayan region, and then in the native North American region, all same thing, giants once roamed the earth, then I don't know, either the explanation to that is called convergent evolution. So it's just basically saying we're humans, we have the same brains, therefore the way we evolve, we kind of it's convergent, even though we're independent of each other, if that makes sense. I mean, that's the explanation behind it. I feel like that explanation is even more far-fetched than
it would take more faith to believe something like that. Look at like the difference between, I have 2 grandkids. They're like 3 and a year and a half, right? Well, I could pick them both up like nothing. Look at, like, if there was a cinder block, the 2 of them together could not budge a cinder block. But I could pick it up with literally like effortless. I could pick up a couple of them. I could hold them over my head like nothing. The 2 of them together couldn't even move it. But like, and so that gap, they're like knee high to me or so, something like that. You take that, and it's like, well, if a lot of times people, especially in of faith, look at these things and think that my pastors never talked about that. I don't know. And they have not really read the Bible themselves. They look at the 3 verses that maybe their pastor talks about on Sunday service. They see that in church. They go home. There's nothing. And like a lot of these things, instead of feeling it threatens their faith, maybe it actually reinforces and enhances their faith, because the stuff is in the Bible. And it's like, well, if that were true, what if we had somebody that was 60 foot tall? What if it's be 30 foot tall, 20 foot tall, these kind of things. I mean, they're clearly all throughout the Bible. And like the famous giant Goliath. Well, that was long after the flood on that. He's only a 10-footer. I mean, he's like just a runt, compared to the things that they're talking about early in Genesis, where they're like taller than trees. Yeah.
And I mean, you do see that everywhere, not just in the Bible. I mean, all cultures, all folklore have this kind of this idea of these beings, these giant creatures, these giant humans, essentially helping us build these structures. And then, so one kind of like fun idea was, what if the pyramids are actually buried within the ground? What if what we're seeing is just the tip of the pyramid, and the remainder of the pyramid is buried within the ground? And it's like we had these giants or whatever place these obelisks in place, which were enormous, and the pyramids are just the tips of those obelisks. And then over time, after the floods, after many thousands of years, hundreds, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years, they got buried over with sand, and all we see now is the tops. So it's interesting to see that we have these giant structures everywhere in the world. And perhaps,
so what are we looking at here? We got the Great Pyramid, as Khulu's pyramid. What those chambers that go down and down and down, big void, small void. What are we looking at here?
So here's it's a cross section of Khufu's pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and so basically we're always finding deeper tunnels within the pyramid. Like all the time, we're constantly finding, oh hey, it goes even deeper than we thought. Oh hey, it goes even deeper than we thought. So we're not even exactly quite sure where the bottom is yet. We haven't found anything that's like, okay, this is it, this is the bottom. This just goes to show that it goes underground too. Like it doesn't end at ground level. There are chambers that go underground, and we're constantly finding newer chambers that go even further and further underground. And it's strange. I mean, especially with the investigation of the pyramids, there's so many restrictions behind it. I believe there's just like one key person that is in charge of most of the investigation of the pyramids in Egypt, and like there's so many restrictions on who can investigate, who's allowed to go in there, who's allowed to even report on what they find in the pyramids. So there's all these like strange rules and restrictions based on how you're able to investigate the pyramids. So who knows if those restrictions were lifted, if we could just go in and keep digging down. So here's the one. This one is obviously a doctored image. Like this isn't
it's not a photo.
Guys, just so you know, this is not a photo.
It's an artistic rendition of what could be if they don't have the bottom edge. It's like if you were excavating a home, you clearly would find the foundation, the foot pad of the house. That would be the perimeter of it. But if they've not found and they've not dug down below the pyramids and know what those edges are, it makes a lot of things possible.
Exactly. So like if you look at these. Sorry, go back to that one again. So this is what would be considered an obelisk, kind of buried underground with only the tip showing. This is a similar effect as this has been found in Easter Island. When we first found the Easter Island heads, we were like, oh hey, it's just some heads sticking out of the ground. Yeah, like that. These are enormous too, by the way. But then when we looked into it more, they were excavated. There you go. They were excavated, and we see that more than 50% of the body was actually hidden underground. So what we thought was the full thing was literally just 40% of what we were actually looking at. And there we have the back of the Easter Island head, and apparently the back has some important carvings that kind of go over stories and how these statues were even built in the first place. So they have these important texts of this instruction manual kind of written on the back, carved into the backs of these statues, which could, who knows, it could be somewhere hidden within the pyramids as well. There's the Sphinx, how it looked like when we first uncovered it. Again, we didn't look at this and say like, oh, that's it. Guess we found the Sphinx. We're done here. We excavated it. We're like, hey, what's more here? Let's try to find it. We dug it out. Turns out there's a full like lion body underneath this head. So it's, all of these structures are always, more than what they seem. And we just assumed that the pyramids were fully showing at first sight. We see this and we're like, okay, we found it. Nothing more to look here. But who knows what's underneath? I mean, it could just be sand. Who knows? It could just be a couple of bricks. It could be, these tall obelisks that we saw in the previous image.
That is fascinating.
And then here's another sample of these what we consider these like giants around the world. This is a giant knife, and you can see the scale here, that was found off the coast of Madagascar. And
is that real?
Again, it's real. Yeah, they found this. It's a knife. I mean, it looks like a knife to me. It doesn't look like a sword. It looks like
it's clearly a handheld knife. It's like a piece of Cutco you cut your steak with.
Yeah, but, exactly.
But the
even
size
on the handle,
of
the size of not a knife. And then you see even in the handle, there's even the grooves for like what looks like to be fingers. And like we find artifacts like this around the world all the time, but we always just like, because it doesn't fit with what our current narrative of history is, we always just find another reason to justify it. Just be like, oh, it was just something that, they made for fun. And then here, Stonehenge, which is like a perfect, a lunar basically viewer. It's a lunar calendar. Stonehenge aligns perfectly with eclipses, with different phenomena that happen in the sky, with eclipses, with when the Earth gets closest to the sun, when it gets furthest from the sun. It's perfectly aligned with all these lunar and cosmic events. The solstice, sorry, that's the word I was looking. The solstice is the equinoxes, and it's perfectly aligned with all those things. And it's these massive stones that were moved in place, and we just wonder how were they moved. And
what's the approximate weight of the stones there? Size? It's a lot bigger than the guy standing there. But for people just listening, are they like 2 tons, 100 tons? Are they
I would say, I'm not sure about the Stonehenge specifically, but I would say over 10 tons, 10 to probably 20 tons. These stones are. I mean, we could look it up to be sure. Oh, 20 tons.
We got producer Colton here fact checking us in
Thanks,
real
Colton.
time. Where is the? Do you know any information as far as where that stone comes from? Was it quarried near, or was it quarried far away? Like, how did they? Was it dug up there and then they stacked up, or would it come from a long ways away and then they did something with it? Like, how hard? I'm just thinking if you had to transport that, like
yeah. So
there was no Home Depot that they ordered these and they came in and they went and got it.
Yeah, no helicopter coming in to drop them. I mean, Stonehenge, I'm not too sure of personally, but these blocks that were brought to the pyramids in Egypt were literally brought from a limestone quarry that were actual hundreds of kilometers away, probably around 100 miles away, and they cut these perfectly cut stone blocks from this limestone quarry and drag them 100 miles through the desert to bring them to the pyramids of Egypt. And I'm not sure about the Stonehenge ones. I could imagine it being something similar to that. But again, how did they bring them? How did they bring them across? They didn't. The wheel wasn't even invented back then when the Egyptians were bringing the stone blocks to the pyramids. They were told to have been placed on these sleds. They greased the underside of the sleds and they just dragged them through the desert. And I mean that's a good explanation because we have nothing.
That's
else.
just what historians are saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the historians are saying.
What they had some kind of sound wave technology that made things wait, or that electromagnetic reverse. There's like, because we don't have the V8 engine, then there could have been so many other technologies that just didn't leave the kind of traces that our modern machines do. I don't know, but again, you don't know. This whole show is called just things that make you go scratch your chin. But at the end of the day, you're still looking at it and saying, okay, then how? But every explanation to me makes more sense than the idea of they just rolled it on some logs, for 100 miles.
Yeah, it's almost feeling like the historians' explanations of these events are almost even like more far-fetched than these crazy conspiracy theories. I mean,
right.
they're just trying to force our current narrative of how we understand things into how they did it back then, and it's almost seeming more ridiculous than them having some sort of technology that we're no longer aware of. Like you said, the sound waves, the levitation waves. There has been many instances throughout history where we see that this could have been possible. Sound could have levitated objects. Maybe we manipulated sound in a way to even levitate objects, to lift objects on top of each other, maybe even to cut precisely through objects, which was able to give us those exact, those perfectly perpendicular, perfectly cut stone granite rocks, and even those stone temples that were perfectly cut into a cliffside. And then so it was said that Nikola Tesla was actually studying these types of sound waves, this levitation technology, and that he was actually getting close to something like what we consider the Great Pyramids to be, these great harbingers of energy, the source of energy that could have been drawn from the sky, or how we were able to manipulate sound vibration in a way to lift these stone bricks on top of each other and to cut through these granite stone blocks. And then it was thought that Tesla was actually getting close to figuring that out, and then what happened with him? He got completely ransacked by the government, and all of his stuff got burned. But we know probably didn't get burned. They probably did take all the schematics and whatever he had, and then that is what I believe led into the Area 51 studies. And then we have the Roswell. What was that guy's name? That was kind of the whistleblower at that in that area of Area 51. I forgot. He was on Joe Rogan.
Lazar?
Bob Lazar. Yeah, exactly.
Bob
So
Lazar.
again, so that technology that was perhaps founded and created by Tesla could have been carried over by the U.S. government into these kind of secret, Area 51 studies. And he even said it was levitating objects that move without any sort of propulsion and move instantly. Right. And it's like, who knows, maybe we are uncovering this technology, but it's being hidden from us right now. This levitation, this sound vibration, whatever it may be, technology. But we're seeing little glimpses of it everywhere. We're seeing glimpses of it in the past. We see it with Tesla. We see it with Bob Lazar and all these uncoverings in Area 51. And when I see a pattern happening over and over, something tells me there's something going on there. So I don't know. Just look.
It's a lot more likely explanation. All right. So, what else do we got? Can we move on? Because this is one of my most exciting things to talk about, because I spent time on these giant bones. I remember at one point I was like, "Oh, this is so exciting!" And then I'm like, "Oh, this isn't real. And then I was so like just cracked. And you kind of shed a lot of light on giant bones and fossils and things that are found that I thought was really unique.
Yeah, so we actually just talked about that for a bit. So these giants would actually give like a pretty reasonable explanation. I mean, not only have we seen them in cultures in every folklore and every religion's kind of history and mythos, and from ancient times to the Bible to native cultures in North America, it would also give explanation to how we were able to move these giant bricks from Stonehenge to Egypt to the Easter Island statues to Saskatchewan in Peru, and all these giant monolithic statues, which we have no idea how they moved. Giants would have explained it. So giant findings actually back in the late 1800s and early 1900s used to be extremely common. They were reported in newspapers all the time. There's hundreds and hundreds of newspaper articles from the 1800s and late 1900s of us finding giant bones in the ground of humans that were up to 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, 25 feet tall. I think the highest one they found was like 36 feet tall, and these giant excavations were found in the news all the time back late 18 to early 1900s, and then all of a sudden it's like sometime in the middle of the 1900s they just stopped like that, and we don't know why. They just no more. A lot of them happened in Wisconsin actually, and they just completely stopped after having them almost all the time. They just stopped these giant news. And then sometime in, I think 2000, what we're looking at here are fake Photoshop jobs of giant excavations. They're all fake.
They look amazing.
They look incredible. Clearly it was when Photoshop was all the rage. Now we went from Photoshop to AI now. Before it was like, oh, it's all Photoshop, it's Photoshop. Now it's like, oh, it's just AI, it's just AI. People always have a reason to discredit any proof. So then what they did, I don't even know who they is, but what happened was there was literally a Photoshop contest for faking giant bones in the ground, and so the internet became littered with these fake giant bones everywhere, all over the internet. These clearly fake, giant findings, photos of giant findings everywhere, and then so this contest kind of created a bunch of buzz behind this. And then what happened is this contest kind of like discredited the real giant findings, because now it's just kind of like, if you talk about giants, it's like, hey man, it's all photoshopped. If you're talking about it, you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the best way to discredit an entire thing is to just document a lie in the middle of it. It's like everybody has a friend like that. It's like, you can't believe anything he says. The little boy who cried wolf too many times, this kind of a thing, because that little hair in the soup cluttered the whole thing. But I can't wait to get into what you're going to get into on the real stuff.
Yeah. So these fakes got laced with the real giant findings, and then nobody knew which one's real, which one's fake. So they all just assumed, oh, they're all fake. Now they're all fake. Since we have these fakes, they all have to be fake. But then, so let me tell you a story first. So the Smithsonian, are you aware of the Smithsonian? They're okay. So they're a leading branch of the government of museum and I believe research education. Correct me if I'm wrong there. So they're the ones that kind of control all the museums, what is the mainstream narrative of archaeological and historical findings, and they control all of that. So back in 1865, I believe, there was something uncovered in San Diego called the San Diego Giant, a pretty tall giant, I think up to like 12 feet or something like that. And it was reported everywhere. All newspapers reported it. Even I believe there might have been radio at the time, so radio even reported it. It was like a known thing at the time that we found a giant. And Smithsonian caught news of this, and they were like, hey, we want to buy this giant. This is an interesting artifact. We want to buy it. And so they bought the giant for however much. I don't know. It was probably a decent amount. They're using publicly funded money, so they have infinite pockets. What I mean? So they definitely paid whatever they needed to get that giant. And then, so they bought the giant, and they were like getting it ready to display in a museum. Then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they make an announcement saying, hey, it was fake. The giant was fake. It was made of gelatin. And that was their official kind of announcement about this, that the giant is fake and was made of gelatin. There's nothing to see here. Let's move on. And it was just kind of a strange thing. Like, why would you pay however much you paid, probably hundreds of thousands, whatever, tens of thousands. This is 1865. It could have been, $10 was worth a lot back then.
Yes.
So whatever amount they paid, why would they pay it and then just say, hey, it's fake, nothing to see here. It's like, and then we never see the giant again. It's gone forever, and it's hidden in, wherever it is right now. wherever the
But it was kind of a little
Lost
bit of
Ark is.
a tongue-in-cheek joke with like the end of the first Indiana Jones movie. You know, they have this Ark of the Covenant thing boxed
That's
up.
exactly
and
what I was thinking of right now.
they always see it stuck in that warehouse, and somebody has a forklift, and you back away, and there's just gazillion crates like that because the Smithsonian is famous for using both government funding and government. I just want to say the strong arm to either financially or gunpoint acquire whatever is found. And then run it through because they're the only ones worthy of having it. And then the stuff is just, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of right now. Like if there is that like kind of warehouse where the Ark of the Covenant is and all these like secret lost like artifacts of the world are, like the Smithsonian definitely is. That's running that.
The administrative state, branch of the government. Because again, like you said, they have unlimited resources. And, when you can get whatever you want or acquire whatever you want, and you got the backing of a military behind you, you're going to get it.
Not just that, but public funding. You have infinite money coming in, no matter what, whether you're doing a job right or whether you're doing it wrong, you're getting paid. That's the definition of the government.
Absolutely. So let's get into some more real ones that we know of in the bone world. I know that there's a femur in here that is pretty ginormous. I think I saw that you'd sent over.
Oh, so this one it's a femur. Again, we find it, we think like, oh, it's crazy. This could be a femur of a giant bone. But then again, they say, hey, it was a dinosaur. Could be a dinosaur, could not be, but it looks pretty big to me. This one belongs to a species of dinosaurs called sauropods. So it's like long necks, Bronchosaurus rex, I think they're called, whatever the long neck dinosaurs are. So that's the species that they're claiming that this belongs to. And then everyone's saying like, okay, it's a dinosaur bone. It's obviously a dinosaur. Let's leave it at that. But then we don't have a single complete skeletal structure of any dinosaur anywhere in the world. We do have, you do see them in museums. You do see that giant T-Rex looking all mad and angry and ferocious, but the majority of those bones are artificial. And this isn't like a conspiracy. This is like a known thing. They admit it. Like they've only found a couple of bones of dinosaurs that are real bones. The rest, the majority of the dinosaur structure is completely artificial. It's bones made to look like the real bones, just to have this skeletal structure in place. So this one right here is my favorite one. This is the most convincing proof of a giant human that we've ever found. This one was found in the Euphrates Valley in Turkey, which would make sense because the Turkey region is kind of where the cradle of civilization is. That is where civilization started. If we were to find giant bones anywhere, it would be there. Many scientists took a look at this bone, and they have confirmed that this is not an animal bone. This is a human bone. This is a human femur bone. So the other bones we were looking at before, kind of big, kind of chunky. It could have belonged maybe to a bigger style of human, but it doesn't match to what our current anatomy of what a human is. This one is almost perfectly identical to what a human femur bone is, and it did not match that of any other type of creature in the world. So this one, they took it in, they measured it, and it's said to have belonged to a giant. If you go to the next one, I believe it was like 20 feet tall or something. No, this is another dinosaur bone. So again, that one before is said to have belonged to a giant human, a human being that is up to 20 feet tall. And again, this one is not faked. That bone that we saw there is not faked. It's not part of the Photoshop job. So it's these tiny little. This is another femur bone that again could have been a giant human, but it's said to have belonged to a dinosaur. This is another one that's real. This one was uncovered in Ecuador. So here's again, this one is allegedly not part of the Photoshop contest. Who knows what people are saying out there just to get credit for what they find. But this one was uncovered in Ecuador, and it's someone looking at what is clearly a human skull buried in the ground with a skull that's 3 times the size of a normal human head.
At least.
So, yeah. So then, so these are, again, the real ones are always so hard to find just because everything is like laced with all these fakes. Here's another one. Could have been from a dinosaur. That's what we always say. But I mean, we don't have the rest of the dinosaur in place. We just find a bone.
They'll make a whole dinosaur out of one tooth.
You're exactly right. And here's another one. This one is said to have belonged to an ancient sloth. They found an entire skeletal structure of this creature. This one I think is like 18 feet tall, 20 feet tall or something. And again, it's a sloth allegedly. I mean, anything could be big as long as it wasn't a human. We had giant bugs back in the day. We had giant plants back in the day. We had giant, apparently, sloths back in the day. We had giant everything but humans back in the day because it goes against the current narrative of what we believe is true today.
That is so true.
And then, so here's another one. We have these fossils of feet, of perfectly shaped feet, all over the world in stone. This is just one of them, but they're all over the world. And these feet, again, would have belonged to giants that are 24 to like 27 feet tall.
What's a foot the size of a man there?
That foot is 4 feet long itself. And if a foot is 4 feet long, they extrapolate the data. They claim, hey, this giant could have been up to 27 feet tall. And again, this isn't like one instance of it found in some place in the world. These foot fossils that are clearly human feet. You zoom in, you can see the toes, you can see the shape of the foot and everything, are found everywhere. And again, these are fossils that are real. They weren't photoshopped or AI generated or anything. This is a record of all official giant findings throughout the world. And underneath you have the heights of each giant. So there you have the average person is 6 feet. It goes from 15 all the way to 36 feet. And these are all recorded giant findings found all over the world. The problem is that some of these giants were found as far back as, how far did we go? To 650 BC, I believe. We didn't have cameras back there, so we couldn't take a picture of it. It was found, and then who knows what happened with it. But yeah, so giant findings like these were a common occurrence around the world all the time. And then all of a sudden, sometime in the middle of the 1900s, we just saw a stop in that. Then anything that was considered to be a giant finding was painted as a hoax. No, it's a hoax. No, it's a hoax. There we go. This is that photo that I was talking about that giant in the Euphrates Valley. This 47-inch human femur found in Turkey in the Euphrates Valley. And again, look, this man standing is barely up to the knees of this giant, and this is how big it would have been.
Well, and it clearly has the almost like Bionicles, those old toys. It's got that like that hip socket connecting ball, there. It clearly is a human femur.
Oh, clearly, like again, it was studied by many professionals in the field, and they confirmed that this could not have been of another animal. It is of a human. And evidence like this it was honestly hard to find. I looked everywhere to find like evidence like this, and like the entire internet, it was just laced with these fakes, and finding this real evidence was difficult. And they're just so few and far between that when you find them, I'm just like, hey, we got one. But I mean, that's
the best way to hide. If there's a specific needle that you're looking for, the best way to hide it is to throw 1,000 fake needles down with it. Like it's just going to get lost in the lies. That's the best way to cover up the truth.
Yeah. This one right here is called Cap d'Oie. And it was, I think, found off the coast of like Brazil or something like that, Argentina maybe. And it was a 12-foot, two-headed 12-foot mummy found off the coast of Argentina. And this one's actually on display in a museum in real life. This one is like, clearly this was taken in a museum right here. So this one is, again, it's fully real. It's not like a Photoshop job or anything like that.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Right?
Unbelievable.
And here we have the missing skeletons and the great Smithsonian cover-up. The Smithsonian is blamed for covering up all these findings. Anytime like even a slight hint of a giant finding is found, the Smithsonian is always quick just to cover it up, to pour water on the fire before it spreads anywhere. And I mean, I feel like from their perspective, they just want to keep the current narrative the same. They don't want to have to rewrite everything and change the entire structure of their, I don't know what their behind the scenes of how they do their museums, or how they proliferate their research throughout, schools and universities, and having to completely rewrite that and change that is just like, I think it's a lot for them.
Hello, Flyover family. Join me every Wednesday for the Prophetic Report at 11:11 Central. You can find it on Rumble. You can find it on the Flyover app. We have such an incredible time of hearing from all of these different prophetic voices like Robin Bullock, Julie Green, Barry Wunsch, Amanda Grace, and Hank Kuhneman. Every week, it's either 5 or 6 different prophets that are speaking, and what's interesting is God is speaking through them, and all of these voices come together like puzzle pieces. It is so exciting to hear what the Lord is saying. We're hearing from medical, we're hearing from military intelligence, we're hearing from the financial world, we're hearing from mainstream media, but the most important is, what is God saying? He has not fallen off the throne. He's not nervous. He's not chewing his nails. He is in control. He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. What a great time to be alive, and I'm so excited for you to join me every Wednesday at 11:11.
Yeah. Okay. So we got the giant bones. We covered Easter Island. can we jump now? We kind of kept this to things on this planet.
Yeah.
But we're talking about pyramids. We're talking about strange things. We got to at least spend a second, because I think most people, if you're into conspiracy conversations and you've watched so far into this show, you've seen the face on Mars, that's showing up in there. So can we just show a couple of pictures of that? You did a show on it, and it was fascinating. Can we at least show those images?
100%. This was honestly one of my favorite ones. So the face on Mars. I knew about this like way when I was a kid. I saw this face on Mars, and then I instantly saw the photo debunking it. And as a kid, I was just like, oh, okay, I guess they proved it wrong. Whatever.
Yeah, you're like, oh, won't.
Yeah, so people see the two photos now. The original photo with like all the shadows, and it looks suspicious. It looks like there's something going on there. And then they see the newer photo, which kind of just flattens all the shadows and shows that it's nothing. And they think like, oh, whatever, it was nothing. But then when you look at the actual sequence of events, the stories here. Keep this photo up for a bit. I'll talk about this one first. So when you see the sequence of photos, not the sequence of photos, but the sequence of events that led up to them showing that final real photo of the face. It becomes like I looked into this, and it becomes so much more questionable versus just looking at the before and after photos, like actually knowing what happened throughout that timeline. So what happened is, back in 1976, NASA sent the Viking 1 satellite to look at Mars. It went around Mars. It took a bunch of photos of the surface of Mars, of an area called Cydonia. And so one of the researchers or investigators of these photos found this. So you see in the top right corner is a photo of what looks like kind of like a face on Mars, like a face monument facing into the sky. And everyone got super interested in that. All the public was like, oh, what's this face? What's going on? This is cool. This is interesting. There's something on Mars. This is back in 1976. Mars was a complete mystery back then. People didn't know anything about Mars. Like, it was just like, what is this planet? People even thought there may be like current living civilizations at that time on Mars, because like someone said they saw canals on the surface of Mars from a telescope on Earth. So yeah, they found this. Viking 1 sees this face on Mars. NASA sees it, and they're like, oh, cool, we could raise interest in the exploration of Mars by showing this to the public. They show it to the public, and it worked a little too well. Everyone got too interested in this face. Everyone's like, what is this face? What is this face? This is so cool. There's something happening on Mars. There's a civilization living on Mars, clearly, because there's a face on Mars.
So the sheep started getting out of hand. They get out of control.
Exactly.
They're thinking on their own. The sheep are talking to each other. Oh, we can't have this.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. And then NASA was like, okay, wait a minute, we have to quench this fire now. And they were like, hey guys, never mind. This isn't real. We have a second photo. Keep this photo up for a sec. We have a second photo of the face that proves that it's just an optical illusion, and it's nothing to see here, nothing to see. And they never showed the second photo. They were just like, we have it, you guys can't see it. And then it wasn't until a couple of years later when some contractors at NASA were like, yo, we got to look into that second photo. Show us the second photo. And this one was the second photo. And if you zoom in on the face, it's literally more detailed than the first. I mean, this one, this one looks like an actual face, even more so than that first photo. So people saw it, and they were like, there's something going on there, clearly. And then, so as I mentioned earlier, look at this. You see an eyes, you see the nose, you almost see the lips. It's like a perfectly head shaped. It goes down to a chin at the bottom. It just looks like a face. I mean, they said that it's just a trick of the eye that it makes it look like a face.
Okay.
I don't know. It's kind of fishy. So then like as I mentioned earlier, when civilizations build these monuments, they build them in clusters. So close to these faces were these other structures in the ground that look like what people thought to be pyramids. They look like man-made, not natural. And then so they looked at these, pyramidal like structures, which were kind of weathered and worn down. But to be fair, if this is from a civilization of 10,000, 100,000 years ago, these pyramids would be pretty weathered and worn down. And so what was of most interest was something called the DNM landform, the DNM pyramid, which was they're kind of the highlight of that trip, of that whole investigation. And it was this landform that looked like a 5-sided pyramid. So like how we have pyramids right now, it's always 4 sides, 4 sides to a pyramid. This one was a 5-sided pyramid. It was like a pentagonal shaped pyramid. And then there was these, professional image. There it is. There's these professional image, satellite image investigators that took a look at this one and all the other landforms in the area, and they have these special calculations and algorithms they're able to perform where they're able to determine whether a landform is naturally forming or whether it is artificial, and they use it on all landforms on Earth to figure it out. And this one like failed the test. Like this one was the test showed that it was artificial, it was man-made. And again, they just dismissed it as like, oh yeah, whatever, nothing to see here. Here we have the pyramids, we see how they're built in clusters like that, just like the area in Cydonia where they built, where we saw the face, there was all these like pyramids in the area. So people got so interested, they were like, we need more photos of this face, get more photos. And NASA just stuck with their guns. They were like, hey guys, it's just an optical illusion, nothing to see here. No. Then in 1993, they launched the Mars Observer satellite, which was again going back to Mars. This is from 1976 to 93. So what is that, like 15-ish years or so in that time span? And they're launching this new satellite to Mars, and everyone's all excited. Be like, hey, we can finally take photos of the face. And then NASA announces, they publicly announced, this is like a recorded thing. They said, we're not bringing any cameras this time. There's no cameras. And everyone's like, you're launching a satellite called Mars Observer, and you're not bringing cameras.
Right. They're changed the name.
And then people are like, what do you mean you're not bringing cameras? Like, bring cameras and take pictures of that face. What are you talking about? They got so much pressure from the public. Eventually they're like, okay, fine, we're bringing cameras, but we're not taking photos of the face. And then everyone's like, what do you mean? Like, why? Like, even if the face was fake, if it was an optical illusion, can't you just take photos of it to prove us wrong? Like, everyone's like, throw us a bone here. There's something interesting on Mars that we want to see.
We're paying for it. So
exactly.
Get up there and take me some pictures, NASA monkey.
It's like a customer of yours is telling you what they want, and you're telling them, no, we're doing this other thing because I know what's best for you. Yeah, it sounds familiar, right? I know what's best for you. And then so this thing is traveling to Mars, and everyone's like, we need pictures of the face. NASA's showing pushback, and then guess what happens? 3 days before, first of all, it's like a 6-month journey to get to Mars. 3 days before this satellite gets to Mars orbit, NASA makes a public announcement saying that they lost contact with the satellite. It's gone. They lost contact with it, and it's no longer. They no longer have contact with it. It's gone. It crashed or technical error. No more. And that's the official story of the Mars Observer. It got to 3 days before it got to Mars. They just lost contact with it. And so at the time, leaks came out within NASA saying that the Mars Observer was actually fully operational and that it was taking close up, high definition photos of the face, of these pyramids, of the DNM landform. It was of all these crazy ancient structures and ruins in Mars. It was taking these crazy close up pictures of it. And the story goes that NASA just didn't have a way of explaining it. So they kind of just dropped it. They panicked basically. They're like, yo, we're seeing these crazy landforms in Mars. We have no way of disproving it now. We got to push the red button and say, hey guys, we lost the observer. So, and of course back then in the 90s, if you believed in leaks, you were considered like a nutcase. Like, oh, hey, this guy believed in leaks. But as we see, especially lately, like leaks have a lot of time turns out to be real.
Leaks are they're intentional, information distribution. And everybody kind of lands on different space with this. I probably would have grown up, been a lot, more interested in, hey, and I think the more I've looked now, the less I'm even convinced probably we've even been to the moon personally. But that's the benefit of this whole show, is because it's like, well, I kind of got a lens, and it's like, and I love having this conversation with you, because it's like, well, if we did go there, that's probably an interesting thing, and why. So you just kind of continue taking in advantage. I'd like to see a picture of Earth from space that's not photoshopped, would be a cool thing. But before I even kind of buy into Mars, but heck, who knows what we're doing. It seems baffling to me that you look at like a 68 Mustang, V8 engine and the kind of AM radio that they had there, and now we have an iPhone and everything else, but yet we can't get past the Van Allen radiation belts or whatever and all this kind of stuff. And, these nerds they put on there, and it's like, I'd go back to the moon in a nanosecond, but we lost all the technology and deleted all the tapes for some reason. We had to, we were recording the Super Bowl over it or whatever, it's like, how do you delete all the storage tapes? So it's just, there's so much bafflement there. And what makes it so where people don't trust it so much is because of all the corruption and the hiding. NASA makes the Smithsonian seem like open transparency. And it's like they certainly spend a lot of money, without a whole lot to show for it, and definitely not a lot of transparency with the people that are paying for it. And I think that's the problem with government. Half the time they kind of forget who's paying the bills because they don't make anything. All they do is print money, but we're the ones doing all the work. All they do is spend it and allocate it, and think that we shouldn't know too much of what they're doing.
Yeah, like I said, it's infinite money. Whether they're doing their job right or wrong, they're getting paid this exact same amount. And I feel like, especially lately, these past couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years, like it's been the veil is being slowly lifted off of people's eyes, and they're seeing like, hey, the government does lie to us. Like it's like a proven fact now that they, like, whether it's for the good or for the bad, they do lie. They if it's part of their strategy to keep peace and order in the world, or whether it's to drive the world into disorder, who knows? They do lie to us. Whereas back in the 90s, the government lying to us was like considered an absolutely ridiculous statement to make. Like you were a crackpot conspiracy theorist with a couple of screw looses if you believed in that.
Right.
So like, but now it's like I feel like it's a little bit more of an accepting view to be that kind of pocket of people is growing, where you see like, hey, the government isn't always truthful with us. Whatever they have going on behind the scenes.
If somebody's proven to lie to you at least half the time, if I had a friend like that, that friend would have to earn back some trust. It's not like, well, he's my friend, I guess I should just always trust him all the time. Probably not with half the time. But where governments, tend to never get along and they're always fighting, working. There's one place that governments all of a sudden, out of the blue, one day decided, you know what? Let's have peace in this one spot. And it's never been questioned, and they've never had a problem, and that's Antarctica. Antarctica, the whole world seems to get along wonderfully. Scientific experiments. Nobody can go there and look at it, but down there, they're getting along great, and the whole world, every nation in the world agrees we're going to work together as one people. So let's talk about some potential ruins in Antarctica.
Okay, yes. So let me tell you something about Antarctica. Antarctica is almost twice the size of Australia. It is a big piece of land. There we have it. It is a huge piece of land. And then we have humans that have traversed throughout the entire world, all corners of the world. We even have humans reaching the tiny islands of the Pacific Ocean, which aren't even visible from space. Like they're so small, but yet humans have somehow managed to find it. And then and on top of that, Antarctica goes through cycles. There have been times in the past where Antarctica was not frozen. It goes through cycles of being, like a luscious. I mean, obviously this picture is doctored, but it does go through cycles of clearly there's penguins.
Watch out, get a tan
out there. Yeah, so there it does go through cycles of when it has been a luscious green land like this. So tell me, how did humans manage to traverse every corner of the world from Africa to Asia to Eurasia to the Pacific Islands to the Americas, everywhere in the world, and yet somehow this giant landmass that's twice the size of Australia, they somehow just skipped over. And people say like, oh, it's a frozen barren wasteland. The entire world was a frozen barren wasteland during the Ice Age. Humans survived during the Ice Age for thousands of years, whether they had to, they bundled up in their woolly mammoth clothing. They survived. Right. They made it through it. And then so that combined with the fact that Australia could have been a luscious green land back in the day, and yet our current mainstream way of thinking is, oh yeah, humans just completely did not inhabit Iceland or Antarctica at all. They just completely missed it. Here are photos of what look like to be pyramids in Antarctica. The common narrative again states that these photos, these pyramids are naturally forming. They're nothing to see here. They're naturally forming land monuments. Nothing of importance here. And then so this photo, for example, is proven. Like this is an actual photo of satellite footage or drone footage of these pyramids. They're called the Ellsworth Mountains in Antarctica. They're perfectly pyramid shaped, but they tell us, oh, they're just naturally forming. They're nothing to see here. And so then back in 1912, before these images were actually discovered, back in 1912, this explorer named Robert Scott went to Antarctica to map it out, and they went through Antarctica, the barren wasteland of ice and snow, and they took pictures. And the pictures that National Geographic released were just like very happy, friendly, just like, oh, look at this crazy, fun Antarctic adventure. Have a look at it. And then a couple of years ago, allegedly these leaks of these Antarctic ruins got leaked. These leaked photos got exposed. And again, everyone says, oh, it's AI, it's AI. Who knows? It could be. I don't know. I didn't make these photos. I didn't take these photos. I wasn't there when it happened. But, you know, everyone just has, whereas before it was like, oh, it's Photoshop. Now it's like, oh, it's AI. Everyone just has their like go-to like reason to discredit something now. And so they uncovered all these photos of these of this Antarctic journey that was previously hidden, that shows, you know, ruins and statues and columns and pillars and, you know, even these pyramids covered in snow in Antarctica. And again, because the government or the powers that be have no way to explain this, they just chose not to show it to the people, is what they claim to do. That there was once an entire thriving civilization living in Antarctica back when it was, you know, a luscious green land, or even maybe it was covered in snow, and humans, just like they did in the Ice Age, found a way to live in snow. Like, big surprise there. Humans know how to live in snowy conditions. So, and then they're saying that there was this hidden civilization there that existed and lived, and there are these pyramids and structures and artifacts and even statues in Antarctica that are just been hidden from the public. And you know, there's something going down there. And then again, the United Nations, all countries in the world have agreed Antarctica is a peace zone. No one's allowed to go there. You're allowed to travel there as a tourist, but like 90% of the country, over 90% of the continent is inaccessible. You're not allowed to go there.
What's the areas like a little? It's a little actual island off of Antarctica, like St. George's something, or what's the name of the place you can go to? You know, you get a picture with the penguin, you can do some stuff, but you're not really going to Antarctica any more than you're going to North America because you went to Jamaica.
Exactly. It's like saying, oh, hey, I went to Jamaica, therefore there are no you know, structures in North America because I saw Jamaica. So tourists are able to see a tiny fraction of Antarctica, and they're like, oh, hey, it's a barren wasteland, but they're not able to see the rest of it. It's right. Like, you know, you're seeing literally less than 1% of the area, and you're making a judgment on that. So
the stuff that's baffling on that, you look at even the Admiral Byrd, you know, interviews, and, you know, people have all their, you know, opinions on him, but these old interviews, you know, back when they used to smoke on TV and those guys were really cool. I think let's play that clip of him talking real quick.
And Whitnor, distinguished companion to the world-honored Longines. Good evening, this is Frank Knight. May I introduce our co-editors for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope? Larry Lasser, CBS News correspondent, and Kenneth Crawford, National Affairs Editor of Newsweek magazine. Our very distinguished guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
The North Pole used to be a no-man's land, but these are the days when, by buying a ticket on a commercial airliner, you can fly across the North Pole and drink a cocktail at the same time. You know, only 60 or more years ago, about 35 years ago, our guest tonight found out whether there was any land north of the North American continent. He made that first discovery flight, and I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily.
It's full of Canadians.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Well, Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
Well, Admiral, would you say that since you've been to both the extremities of Earth, are these expeditions to far-off places, are they getting easier because of modern techniques, or is danger still close at hand?
Well, it's a little risky, but nothing like it used to be with the old slow planes and the small cruising radius where we had to put down bases. We replaced the dog teams, and of course that was a big improvement. But now the planes go much faster and they are safer, and they have a much bigger cruising radius. You haven't got the danger of a terribly heavy load. Valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime, because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And you know, as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places, once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful. The bottom of the world will be important, not only to us, but to our allies.
I was going to...
So you look at that. We could put this whole video link in the notes here below. But he doesn't strike me as a guy that's a kook or come off. He's one of the most decorated military officials, and we haven't. He's done stuff, and it's like, yeah, I don't know if he can be discredited or not. But it's an interesting thing of what his description was of Antarctica. Mountains, we get coal and resources, all these things available, and all of a sudden it's like one day, zoom, nobody can go there, nobody can visit, it's off limits, and there's nothing to see here, folks. Move along, and it's the only place on Earth every nation just kind of gets along peacefully, and they don't get in each other's way.
Yeah, and he was right too in that it has incredible military strategic significance in both the North Pole and the South Pole. It gives us access to parts of the world that we thought that we wouldn't be able to access. From Canada to Russia. Canada is way closer to Russia than we think. If you go across the North Pole, we're almost neighbors here. So yeah. He was right on that part too. And they say that there could even be we know there are research stations in Antarctica. That's not a secret. But there could potentially be some research stations there that are doing things that we don't know what they're researching there. There are some known ones, and there could be also some secret, top secret kind of research facilities there where they're doing who knows what, hollow earth, questionable things. These are the photos that National Geographic released. Just showing it like a family friendly fun adventure for Robert Scott and his whole team. And then
you look at those guys; they didn't have North Face technology or all these kind of coats with layer. They didn't have
no Canada Goose back then. And they just traverse the North Pole like that with just whatever technology they had back in 1912.
A wool jacket.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was crazy too because then allegedly after these leaked photos came out, Robert Scott and his team died 2 months later after taking these photos, and they died because it's cold in Antarctica. They died of starvation and extreme cold, of getting back to whatever they needed to get back to in order to get back to the mainland. But they died 2 months after taking these photos. So make what you will of that, whether it was a tragic occurrence or whether something else happened.
And that's where you don't know. All right, next one, and this is one of the most interesting ones. Our team was going through all your different content. We're like, okay, we got to ask him this: the lost continent of Mu.
Yeah, the lost continent of Mu. So,
am I saying that right?
Mu, Lemuria, I think, is the full name of it. I mean, there's
this eighth continent.
The eighth continent. There's different hypotheses as to where it existed. Where I feel like it makes most sense as to where it existed is in the middle of the Pacific. Look at the Pacific Ocean. It's enormous. It's massive. It's the biggest single mass of whether land or water in the world that we have. So it's said that there was this continent called Mu sitting in the Pacific Ocean, and then what we currently have as the Pacific Islands, which are these tiny little islands sprawled throughout the Pacific that these ancient warriors allegedly sailed 2,000 kilometers in these wooden canoes, these as I call them, rickety canoes of through the oceans, making their ways to these tiny islands. And that's our modern explanation of it. It's yes, they took these canoes, to these islands. They travel 2,000 kilometers through treacherous oceans to find these islands, like finding a needle in a haystack. Like, this island is like basically microscopic compared to the size of the ocean, and that's our current explanation of how these islands got discovered, how they got inhabited. And if you disagree with that, then you are a terrible person because you're discrediting the Polynesian race. It's like, no, that's not what we're doing here. We're trying to look into it to see if there's any other explanations, any other descriptions as to how this could have happened. And so this continent of Mu would have expanded throughout all the way down to Easter Island, to Hawaii, and all the way to Micronesia in the west. And it was this land that allegedly existed there. And then when this flood came over, so again, like I said before, this every civilization has and every folklore has stories of giants. Same goes for the story of the flood. We all know this famous story of Noah's Ark. Every civilization that has existed before us, whether it be the Sumerians, whether it be the Polynesians, the Epic of Gilgamesh, they all had the similar story of a flooding the world and life kind of renewing, restarting, resetting. And so what kind of is a hypothesis here was that this land of Mu was a continent that existed in the Pacific Ocean. When this flood occurred, the entire continent got flooded over, and only the highest points of that continent, which make up what is now Easter Island, Hawaii, French Polynesia, Micronesia, all those tiny little islands scattered throughout the Pacific Oceans, are just the peaks of the highest points of elevation of this continent of Mu, which got completely flooded over. And the way these tiny pockets of islands got inhabited was because Mu was a sprawling civilization of, I think, over 60 million people. And then so some of these people just survived by just staying in the areas like French Polynesia, like Hawaii and Easter Island, that didn't get flooded over, and just continued living in that area there. So, I mean, that's the hypothesis behind Mu. And again, Mu is as a continent has been explained by many other civilizations across the world. From like ancient India did mention Mu, the Aztecs mentioned Mu, and then, again, it's this thing that we see repeated all throughout civilization that existed there. And then we're just supposed to believe like, oh, hey, no, it doesn't exist now, so it never existed.
Do your feet ache and throb in pain with every step you take every day of your life? Well, kiss those days goodbye with slippers from MyPillow.com. How about that flimsy, flat little excuse for a pillow that's nothing but 8 hours of disappointment, causing you pain in your neck every single night? You can wake up with nothing but butterflies and rainbows around your head with a MyPillow pillow. Those hardwood floors hurting your old bones? No more with a MyPillow dog bed. Are your towels worn thin, flimsy, more patchy than Joe Biden's memory? There's nothing better than absorbent towels from MyPillow.com. For all of these products and more, go to MyPillow.com and use promo code FLYOVER for up to 66% off. Wow. It does make more sense than just floating across there on a canoe. And, whenever we vacationed in the islands there, I'm always like, that seems highly improbable. But I don't have any other explanation. But again, it's a thing that makes you kind of scratch your chin and just say, very interesting.
Did these ancient tribes take, wooden canoes that were built, with technology of 1,500 years ago, 2,000 miles into the ocean, traveling for weeks on end and find these islands? Maybe. I'm not saying that's impossible. Like, who knows? Or was there a land that existed before that encompassed all these islands within the Pacific that just got flooded over?
All right, let's jump into CIA classified book. I'm going to just keep squeezing you and poking you until we get all these cool things out.
Okay, so this is actually a perfect segue. So as I was talking about the story of the global flood, every culture, every civilization talks about it. It's a thing that has been passed down by generations. We see it as a something that occurred way back in the day in the biblical era, in the biblical times, where the entire world got flooded over and humanity had to reset. So allegedly, the CIA back in 2013 declassified this book. The name of the book is The Adam and Eve Story. I believe you can even buy it off Amazon at this point. It's not like it's been declassified, so it's out there now. And then this story, this book talks about it's classified as nonfiction. It's not a fiction book. So it talks about an end of the world scenario that happens once every like 11,600 years, where the entire world is filled with these cataclysmic events, volcanoes going off, earthquakes, world catastrophic floods that happen that reset society, that reset civilization. And according to this book, we're actually the sixth civilization to actually exist, the sixth advanced civilization to exist on Earth. And this has been a cycle that's been repeated over and over and over. And the most recent cycle is obviously the story of, the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Noah's Ark, whatever your interpretation of that story is, all point to the exact same story of like someone gathering all the humans, putting them on a boat, or somehow keeping them safe, letting this flood the earth, and then once everything settles, they come back and repopulate and rebuild the earth. And then so what this book talks about is that this thing is actually real, and it has happened 6 times. We are the sixth advanced civilization to exist on Earth, and it happens every 12,000 years or so, where what happens, this is the pole shift, if you've heard of that. So the poles shift, they move into, what happens is the poles, the north and south poles shift to different locations of the earth. But while that happens, the earth it just causes a whole bunch of mess, because the earth is rotating on its axis. And then as the poles shift, like the water and the air through earth is still moving in the same direction, but now the poles are in different locations. So everything kind of like gets shooken out of place. And when that happens, we have these incredible like hurricanes and tornadoes and flooding and earthquakes and volcanoes going off that just disrupts the entire world. And this is like absolutely catastrophic. It destroys everything. And so what people ask is like, oh, if there was an advanced civilization before us, where are all the buildings? Where are the stones, the concrete buildings? Where's the evidence of past civilizations? And it's like those things, like buildings and our current modern way of building architecture is within a couple hundred years completely disintegrates into nothingness. Whereas structures like the pyramids, like the Easter Island statues, like these stone megaliths that exist around the world are the only things that survive, because stone survives for much longer than our modern architecture survives. So that's the answer to that, is that like stone survives, which we see it has. The Sphinx, the pyramids, all these stone structures have survived throughout the ages. And the rest of civilization kind of resets and restarts from anew. And then this is that's the whole hypothesis behind this book. And I mean, it's a real book that was declassified by the CIA.
And so they like confiscated the book and then like put it under wrap for an extended period of time until recently.
So the story goes was that there was a contractor working at the CIA, and he wrote this book based on documents or based on things that he found within the CIA. And then and then they found this.
That's the Chan Thomas. It says the author, Chan Thomas.
Yeah, that's his name. And he was a contractor at the CIA. And then he wrote this book back in the 60s. The CIA classified it, obviously. And then now I think there's like a statute of limitations to how long you classify something. So after like 50 or whatever years, they have to unclassify it. It's just part of the rules of the CIA. So they did that. And they just painted Chan Thomas as a crazy crackpot person who doesn't know what he's talking about. He's crazy. Don't listen to him. But they classified it to begin with. Why couldn't they just say that to begin with? If they actually had something to hide for 50 years or however long, they could have just said it from the start, right?
The thing is, these agencies lie so much that the fact that they don't want it out, to me, gives it credibility.
Yeah.
You're like, well, maybe there's something to it. Chan Thomas must have been pretty smart when you look at the things that are going on today. All right.
Yeah.
Next thing, illusion, the Ames window. This is just fun. This is something like this. It's interesting that there's something about us as a species that we can be tricked. And we also kind of like to be tricked. You like to go to watch magicians, and it's like, I know it's fake. You put this rubber band over, the coins over here, like how they did it is kind of interesting. But there's certain ways that we process data and information that creates blind spots instinctively.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. So now we're winding down from the crazy, theories of the world and civilizations and governments lying. This one I actually really liked. It's so the Ames window is just an illusion of the eyes. You look at it. If we could pull that video up, you look at it, and it's basically like a lopsided window. One side is bigger than the other, and it's spinning on a string. So if you just play this, it's spinning on a string, and it really is spinning in circles. But because due to the lopsided cut of the window, it kind of just looks like it's going like this. It looks like it's just kind of swinging.
It totally looks like it's back and forth.
Just back.
It looks
and
like
forth. So
it looks like it's just doing a partial.
Yeah, exactly. So then when you put like an actual, like in this case, the guy puts a Rubik's Cube, like good connection to what we're talking about here. And then it almost looks like the Rubik's Cube is making these flips and turns that almost don't even make sense. You see it go to one side, and then it kind of like it looks like the Rubik's Cube is spinning on its side while it flips, and it kind of just messes with your brain. The one that really gets me is the ruler. This like your brain can't even fix the illusion in your head, even when you see the ruler. It literally looks like the ruler is just like
cutting
spinning
through it,
and just doing flips that aren't even possible through the window. And this just messed with my head so much. It was such an interesting thing, and it literally is just a window that's spinning in circles. So I mean, yeah, that was a crazy one. Another good one was the dinosaur. If you pull up the other one, it's this picture of a T-Rex where it's like you see the first time you see it, you're almost certain that of like, hey, this thing is looking right at me. But once the veil is lifted off your eyes and you see the illusion for what it actually is, it's like your brain just fixes it, and now you see it. Like it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
So this thing is pretty crazy. You look at it, and it looks like this dinosaur head is spinning as you turn. Right? It looks like it's looking at you. Or it's almost like looking away.
Swiveling head. It definitely has a swiveling head.
Yeah, there's something happening with that head. It's swiveling, it's going back and forth, it's looking at you, and you can't really figure out what is happening with this dinosaur. And like right now you're looking at it, you're almost certain like, hey, this dinosaur is a 3D head, it's swiveling its head, it's looking at me, something is going on here. And then I think they do a bigger version of that. Okay, now we have a whole bunch of them.
8 of them on the table.
And again, even with 8 of them, they look like they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah, it looks like my dog wanting a treat.
Yeah, they're all just like looking right up at you, and then now they kind of like look away from you. Like, yeah.
But it's not moving.
It's not moving at all. Like even right now when you're looking at it, it's hard to like even me, I'm like, how is this illusion even working right now? Like it doesn't make any sense to me how this is not actually a moving head. This is actually a stationary object, and it's purely just an illusion of the eyes. I think here's where they unveil it. Here we have a giant version of this dinosaur. So again, same thing. It seems like it's looking right at you, and then you go the other way, and it's doing the same thing. It's turning its head away, and again, it's turning its head towards you like it wants something. And then here's where the trick is given away. And that's all it was from the start. Just a bunch of cuts inward cuts of cardboard into a thing. And now you can't unsee it. Now you see it for what it actually is. And like all of a sudden everything just makes sense. And
wow.
If you go back now and you watch those other videos, it's like sometimes you got to put a bit of brain power into it. But when you really think about it, you could see it for what it actually is now. And you're like, I can't believe I actually thought it was a dinosaur that was looking at me the whole time. And I mean, yeah, it's just like, that's a crazy illusion. That one actually like tripped me out when I first saw it.
I think that's important because there's almost like a lesson in that like we want to trust what we see. It's like, well, I saw this and this is what happened. But we've all seen these experiments. There's one with like a bunch of people passing a basketball around and you're supposed to follow the ball. And then
I think I've seen that one.
And then they play it again, and like there's this guy in a bear costume that walks through the whole thing or something.
And you didn't notice it. Yeah.
And you're like, I did not see it. And it's like we can be fooled. And I think that's part of entertainment. We kind of like to be fooled. You like to go to a movie and like be tricked at the end, and it was a good plot. Oh, maybe producer Colton pulled this thing up as fast as we did. You get the bear passing ball trick. Oh, this guy's amazing. Deserves a raise.
I think it's with this bear passing thing. Now that we ruined the trick, so everyone's looking for the bear that's going to be coming onto the stage now. So now
it'll still get him.
Yeah. So it's the goal here is you got to count how many times the basketball is passed. So you're so focused on these people throwing the ball. You're looking at it. You're so focused. You're trying to count all these passes. I mean, now it's just incredibly obvious.
And I think part of it is you're supposed to see the people in the white shirts versus people in the black shirts, and you're passing the number of times the ball was passed. Correct answer is 15 passes, but the point is you get so focused on that you miss the gorilla. And, they wind it out, and there he is kind of, moonwalking through the deal. And I think that's a little bit of where we get sometimes. It's like you get so distracted on Fauci said don't wear masks, and now he's wearing 2 masks, and you get so like on this that like you sort of miss the fact that they crashed your currency and they're shifting you into a central bank digital currency so they can track every single expenditure you make and make sure that they can control you in the future if they don't like your Facebook post, or whatever the reason is for doing it. It's like you get so on this, you miss that, and that's kind of the purpose of just a lot of the information around us nowadays is enough misinformation. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what to trust. And the fact that we can be fooled even when you're looking at something. When you look at the dinosaur, he's got a swiveling head. No, he doesn't have a head. He's a piece of cardboard. He's not moving at all, but your brain's interpreting his movement. Like, I think that is an interesting thing that we all have to be aware of on a day in, day out basis. We all have our own biases, and we get information inside of echo chambers. And that's why it's so important to even have conversations like we're having, because it forces you to look all the way around the T-Rex and make sure that you're not even creating your own illusion of what is and what isn't, because you want that to be so badly that you're like, well, that is what is happening. And it's not. Let's end with the last thing here. You're in Canada. We've never personally met, but according to one of your videos, and we're going to end with this one, we might be cousins.
That's right. I'm not even might be. We are. Like, it's me, anyone else in the world. We are all cousins. We are all related. Maybe not cousins, whatever kind of terminology you want to use for this. It's everyone in the world is related. And I mean, this isn't a crazy conspiracy. This is literally just math. You take you, David. You had 2 parents, right?
Correct.
A mom and a dad.
They both had
2. Exactly. That's as far as you know, right? And they both had 2 parents each. So you have 4 grandparents. And then you continue that again. So you had 8 great grandparents. Every person had 2 parents before them, 2 parents that made up before them. Eventually, you go back this trail far enough. When you hit I think 40 generations ago or something, you hit like 1 trillion ancestors. If you go 40 generations ago, you have 1 trillion ancestors, which is more than more humans that have ever existed in all of history combined, which is around 100 billion. Here we have a nice animation kind of explaining that. And then so you ask yourself, how is that possible? How do I have 1 trillion ancestors 40 generations ago when hasn't even been 1 trillion people that exist on Earth? And then it's because there is crossbreeding happening. A little bit of Alabama love, as I called it. Some people within the same family are making children with each other, which is where this is happening. And then there it is, 1 trillion ancestors. And then so if you go back, if you take any person in this world and take anyone else and you trace their family timelines back far enough, you will eventually reach one common ancestor between those 2 people. That's just a guarantee. It's not like, oh, it might not be. That's a guarantee. There's one common ancestor between us, just based on this math of there not being enough humans in the world to actually support one person having just completely unique ancestors throughout all of history. But then we could even extrapolate that even more, not just between 2 people, but between 3 people and 4 people, 5 people. Eventually, you could extrapolate that same pattern to every single person in the world, all 8 billion people in the world. If you trace back far enough on the ancestral trees of all 8 billion people in the world, eventually we will reach one common ancestor among all 8 billion people in the world. And that's just how the math of family trees just works. And we just physically do not have enough humans in all of history for every person in the world to have completely unique family trees. Eventually they converge into one, which is called the MRCA, I believe, the most recent common ancestor. There we go. MCRA, most common recent ancestor, which is according to our math, is someone around 300 BC. and I think located somewhere in the Eastern Asian region, just based on whatever calculations these scientists and historians were able to make. But yeah, I just thought that was incredible. It just shows that everyone in the world is related. We're all connected. We're all, in a way, brothers and sisters, not just figuratively, but literally. We are all connected. And what's even crazier with this is you could even extend this to beyond just humans and even into all living things. So we are actually all related to even plants. And if you trace back plants and bacteria and trees and grass and dandelions far enough, eventually every human on Earth and every form of life and animals and plants on Earth have one recent common ancestor, which is probably some bacteria that existed,
Well, at a molecular level, there's not a lot of difference between myself and a lump of coal. I mean, there's like, what are you like? I forget the percentage, but like, it's pretty similar, carbon based.
Or yourself and even like a piece of fungus. We actually, we're more related to fungus than we think.
And if you're listening to this and you're like a person of faith and you think, well, I don't know, that kind of sounds like, Darwin or whatever like that. Well, what about the possibility that God created Adam from dirt and breathed life into him? It's like, well, there's pretty good odds then if he was made out of dirt and when he dies, he decays and returns to dirt, same as me, that, there's pretty good chance that on a molecular level, there's pretty good similarities between me and dirt because that's what I was made from. So it's kind of interesting when you look at that, and there's a lot more reasons for us all to be able to get along than to not when you trace that back, because you know what, more than likely we're all related, and you trace it back far enough, and that is a fact, even if you're from Canada. And I'm from
no
Kansas
matter where
City.
in the world you are. Yeah. See you at that next Christmas dinner, right?
Absolutely. Well, philspixel.com, F-I-L-S, pixel, P-I-X-E-L.com. It'll take you right to his TikTok channel. You can be able to watch his short videos. And guys, we're all in this together. I always like to say, man, in an era like this, there's probably most of the problems in the world. You're going to trace an organizational chart and you're going to go up to, there's probably 300-400 people, maybe 3,000, that are kind of have some levers of control that are sort of making it hectic on everybody. You can trace it up. Is it big pharma? Is it the bankers? Is it, this, or who's the they? They always talk about who's the they, but there's not very many they. There's a lot more us that are kind of trying to get along, pay our bills, raise our families, and get along. And it's kind of up to us to figure out some of these mysteries. And that's the purpose of a show like this, a conspiracy conversation. It's like, things that were considered conspiracy, a while back. It's like, I don't know, maybe soon enough we'll know who killed JFK. We'll know where Jimmy Hoffa is at. We'll know, truth about the moon landing or not, one way or the other. And we'll definitely know something like a Joe Rogan who was taking ivermectin and that's veterinary horse paste. And why would he do that? And like, well, conspiracies are happening brand new every single day. And it's kind of up to us as individuals to decide, hey, you know what? How do I engage in critical thinking, take in multiple data points of information, put it in the old Vitamixer up here, turn it around, and come up with my own thought and try to interpret the world around me, and then have intelligent conversations with the people around me without shutting them down, without insulting, calling names to somebody that thinks different than me. It's like, hey, we can work on this together because, like I said, again, there's a lot more of us than there are of them, and it's up to us to try to make sense of this world, because it's not going to be found on mainstream media. It's not going to be on CNN. It's not going to be on Fox. It's not going to be on the BBC. It's probably not going to be allowed to get to your children through the public education system. It's going to be up to us, and we got to share good ideas with each other and encourage people that are doing that along the way. And that is why, Philip, I reached out to you, and that's why I love the fact we had this conversation. If you were here in town, you're the kind of guy I'd love to go out and have some barbecue with, or a cup of coffee and hang out with, because you're a thinker. And I appreciate that we live in an era where we have the technology for you to be able to share these ideas and inspire other people with your curiosity. And thanks for sharing it with our audience today.
Oh yeah, 100%. Likewise. It was quite a journey. We went through a lot of topics. I'm so glad we went through all of them. I was kind of nervous, like, oh, we might not have time to do everything, but we banged them all out. And going off of what you said, it's like what I say a lot of times in my videos. A lot of the times especially we saw in the last couple of years, last few recent years during the COVID era, The difference between a conspiracy and fact is just time. What was a conspiracy 8 months ago is now a fact being yelled in our ears by all the scientists.
Yes. I'm just a conspiracy therapist at this time, and we kind of all come together and we'll figure this out individually.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. It's an incredible gift. It's the only thing you can give that you really can't get more of, and I appreciate you sharing it with us today. And I'd love to have you back again and just kind of keep chiseling at some of these mysteries.
Oh yeah, 100%. I got so many more videos planned out that just like honestly, I'm looking at my new ideas and they just putting my old topics to shame. So like everything is just getting so much crazier for me. So I'm excited. I'm so amped to release what I have coming up.
All right, Flyover family, you guys go to theflyoverapp.com. Download the app. It's the only place we won't be completely censored and taken out. Otherwise, if you're on Rumble, wherever you are, please give it a like. Please continue to show up. We're going to have another one next Saturday. If you didn't like this one, check out the next one. It'll scratch you in the right spot. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Are you having a hard time sleeping at night, thinking, what am I going to do about my finances?
Times are really changing. They're changing fast. Let me give you a quick example of how. In 1920, if you had a $20 bill and 1 ounce of gold, you could go into any men's clothing store and buy an entire suit. You could buy the jacket, the shirt, the belt, shoes, the whole bit. Today, that $20 bill, what's it going to get you?
Not much.
Maybe the socks, maybe a handkerchief, but the 1 ounce of gold could still buy you the entire suit at any men's store in America. That's the difference. That's what inflation does to your dollar. It's a deflating dollar caused by inflation. Now today, that's happening faster than ever. You need somebody that you trust that can help get you out of a fake currency and into something that's going to keep you safe.
And we know a guy that has 2 PhDs by the name of Dr. Kirk Elliott. We have known him for over 25 years, and he's someone we completely trust.
You need somebody that you can get a hold of, somebody that's going to be there for you to get back out of it, and then maybe back into the stock market, maybe back into something else when things settle down. But right now is not that time. You need somebody that you trust and somebody you can call and make those worries go away.
That's exactly right. So you can go to flyovergold.com, fill out your information for a free consultation, or you can call 720-605-3900. Do it today.
You'll be glad you did.
For more great content, go to flyoverconservatives.com.